Chapter 309 Wait for him to return, Part 2. At the decisive battle at Zhuguan was imminent. The Gu family's army was calmly waiting for the enemy to arrive. Gu Zhougu and Gu Hanemo, who were stationed in Weizhou and Changchuan, were also waiting. They were waiting for their moment to fight to the death. They had to lead the defenses of their respective cities against the enemy. The suffering that they had to endure on their own during the past few days was even harder to bear than waiting for a blade that was already resting on their necks. Yet they could not allow themselves to show it in front of their subordinates. They needed to maintain a calm disposition in front of the troops to steady their hearts and pretend that they had some way of keeping Western Kuan's army outside their gates. Even if they could not win, they would at least be able to stall until reinforcements arrived. Normally, Gu Hanemo would train with his sword every day. After arriving in Changchuan, he was no longer in the mood to train. He spent his days engaged in a staring contest with the troop deployment map in the main tent. The problem was that the map did not have eyes, while he did, and his eyes quickly turned bloodshot. In just a few short days, he reflected on all of the military tactics that Gu Huaijiang and Gu Shubai had taught him. He considered which battle formations would be best suited for the upcoming battle. Kuan Wushang did not keep them waiting too long, and the day of the battle finally came. Gu Shubai got up early in the morning and took a deep breath of the fresh air outside his tent. The autumn wind had a desolate and sandy smell that was unlike the air in the capital. The autumn wind in the capital was milder and more humid, and it carried the faint fragrance of osmanthus flowers. This place just smelled dry and sandy. The fallen leaves were picked up by the wind and would occasionally hit people in the face, causing a bit of stinging pain. He had a feeling that Kuan Wushang would commence his attack today. Yu Fu hugged her treasured chest. The chest that she was holding was a little large, and it blocked her vision of her feet. She tripped over a small stone and nearly fell over. Fortunately, someone grabbed her arm, and that person was Gu Shubai. Where has Yalan gone? Why is she not carrying the chest for you? I haven't seen her at your side over the past few days. What have you told her to do? Yu Fu stood up straight and steadied herself. She hasn't gone to do much. I told her to rest inside the tent. On the horse ride over here, her body was covered in bruises. To this date, Yalan had not suffered so greatly. Naturally, she should be allowed to get some rest. It's fine if she is not here with us. I can carry this chest myself. Gu Shubai smiled upon hearing this. She had not suffered so greatly up to this moment. Could it be that you have? Yu Fu was clearly the young miss, while Yalan was the maidservant, thus Yu Fu would be infinitely nobler. However, she took care of things herself to allow Yalan to rest. Yu Fu tilted her head and thought for a bit. It can't be considered suffering, but when second brother and I went to Changzhou last winter, we also rode day and night without resting through the snow. I would have more experience than her, right? Saying this, she patted her treasured chest. Eldest brother, I happen to have something to discuss with you. Let's go and discuss it inside the tent. The sentry stationed outside the tent brought them breakfast. It was plain congee with some side dishes. Fortunately, it had the shredded meat that Yu Fu loved. The two ate breakfast while chatting. Yu Fu held her spoon in one hand and pulled out a green porcelain bottle from her treasured chest. I went through my medicine kit last night and thought about what might be of use and found this. Gu Shubai raised an eyebrow. He felt that there was something strange about the green patches on this bottle. It looked like it was a poison that was meant to cause harm to others. Could it be that Yu Fu was thinking of copying Kuan Wushang and using the poison on the land? He put down his spoon and wiped the corner of his mouth. What is the drug? It's a medicine that Master created to treat metal-inflicted wounds. It's very effective on external injuries. If you guys get injured during battle and can't stop the bleeding, this can quickly stop the bleeding. When I first left Immortal's Valley, Master gave it to me. I left it inside the chest and nearly forgot about it. Yu Fu had never suffered any external injuries, nor had she ever had a wound that did not stop bleeding. At worst, she had a nosebleed that would not stop when she was younger. This unique medicine was one that she never had a chance to use. It turned out that it was a medicine for metal-inflicted wounds. Gu Shubai let out a sigh of relief, received the porcelain bottle, then brought it up to his nose to sniff it. I thought it was some sort of poison. I recall the more poisonous items in your chest all had strange bottles. Those are all poisons that I prepared. It makes it a bit easier to remember. This is a medicine that Master gave me, and all of the bottles that Master uses are very strange. He really likes buildings with strange architecture and medicine bottles with strange shapes. Yu Fu patiently explained, then earnestly said, when it comes to poisons that can be used on the battlefield, I don't have any fewer compared to Kun Wushang, but I despise such things. Using poison to poison a large area is indeed powerful, but the damage to the land is too great. If one is not careful, it will cause harm to the innocent. Even if the ones harmed are just Western Kun citizens, they're still innocents. Gu Shubai found her point of view to be quite novel and patted her on the head. I also feel this way. Who knew that the two of us would happen to have the same opinion? The battlefield is a place where soldiers belong. Regardless of which country's citizens we are speaking of, they should not be implicated. You are very correct. If Father heard what you said, he would definitely be very proud of you. Yu Fu obediently looked up at him, resembling a well-behaved cat laying in a person's lap. Visit Wuxia World. EU for extra chapters. She said, Head General feels this way, and Master also feels this way. He has never approved of us spreading that sort of poison on the battlefield. It is very potent, and it's very easy for innocent people to get injured. Master said that that poison was meant to be used to escape from an enemy's trap, but Kun Wushang went against Master's teachings. He probably won't be able to return to Immortals Valley. Yu Fu furrowed her brow. In truth, he was not like this before. Master clearly knew that the disciples from Western Kun had their ulterior motives, but he still allowed him to study because he felt that he was not a bad person. In the past, he liked laughing and messing around in Immortals Valley, and he always liked being around me. At that time, I felt that he was just a carefree person, but now, I understand that he just wanted to steal secret poisons. He must have stolen the formula for the poison from me. Yu Fu felt a little responsible. In the past, she had been too young and was unable to take any precautions against Kun Wushang. As a result, he was able to steal the poison that Master had been unwilling to give him. It would have been one thing if it had been any other poison, but it just had to be Chongqing San. It took tens of thousands of lives from the Gu family's army. Kun Wushang's crimes were countless, while Yu Fu herself was not blameless. She did not speak, but Gu Shubai understood. He reached out and pulled her into his embrace. Don't think too much. It's not your fault. I can tell that Kun Wushang was sincere with you. He does not want to hurt you. People have multiple faces, and in front of you, he is just a clingy junior disciple. It's natural that you would be defenseless against him. Yu Fu snuggled in his arms. His skin smelled the same as her own, having the faint smell of fresh grass. The two similar scents came together and mixed. It was as if the two people were originally part of the same person and were now reunited. Yu Fu quietly said, back when we were in Immortals Valley, he really was not like he is now. He would run to the creek and steal the clothes that his fellow disciples had taken off. When they would chase after him and give him a beating, he would still be laughing. He would also buy all sorts of delicious treats to bribe Yaolan just to speak a bit more with me. Yaolan had always quite liked him, seeing him as an older brother. I had her stay in the tent also to keep her from hearing news about Kun Wushang. Gu Shubai nodded. It's no wonder Yalan would often ask about information about him while we were in the capital. It turned out that this was something that had happened. Yu Fu, people change. This is true for Kun Wushang, and you and I are also no exception. As a prince of Western Kun, there are many things that cannot be avoided, but mistakes are still mistakes. As for you, you are still young and will continue to grow up. You can't keep looking at others with naive eyes. Do you understand? Yu Fu hesitated for a moment. Will eldest brother also change? Gu Shubai said with certainty, of course, I will. I will change with the times, and everyone will change. For example, father was previously unwilling to cross over the border to attack Western Kun, but that has also changed. Yu Fu said, Head General and Kun Wushang are different. He does it to protect his family and country. His actions have changed, but his heart has not. After saying this, she fell deep into thought. A person's actions would change, but the heart would not. As long as one stayed true to themselves, there was no need to worry about constantly changing with the times. Then will eldest brother also change like Head General did? She finally understood, and Gu Shubai smiled. Of course, all of the sons of Marquis Gu's manor were raised and taught by father, and we have all inherited his style. That was good. Yu Fu smiled and looked up at him. Just as she was about to say something, she suddenly heard the sound of a warning coming from the camp. Western Kun's army had come. Gu Shubai immediately stood up and started walking out. Yu Fu stuffed the porcelain bottle into his hands and stayed behind to send him off. What came next would be his battlefield. She just needed to quietly stay here and wait for him to return. Chapter 310 All's Fair in War, Part 3, The sound of a horn signaling a charge rang through the air. Sure enough, Western Kun's main force was situated at Zhuguan. Kun Wushang sat in the middle of the army and thought back to what his scouts had said. Sure enough, the Gu family's army believed that he wanted to attack the two cities on the flanks and that he had moved most of his army to Weizhou and Changchuan. Now, Zhuguan was nothing more than an empty city without many soldiers left to defend it. The official leading the vanguard laughed. There are only so many people? They might as well just surrender now. Your great general is allegedly known for never losing a battle, but hasn't he been deceived by His Highness' plans just like this? The Gu family's vanguard was led by Gu Shubai alone, and he coldly said, Your esteemed country's seventh prince has many schemes. First, he poisoned the entire area, turning this land into a wasteland. He then pretended to move to attack the two flanks in order to deceive us. This one is in awe. The enemy loudly said, all's fair in war. As long as victory can be obtained, the methods used do not matter. Brothers, forward. We must obtain a quick victory before the soldiers return from Weizhou and Changchuan. In Kun Wushang's strategy, taking advantage of time was of utmost importance. Taking advantage of the Gu family's army being spread apart, he would quickly score a win at Zhuguan. As he gave the order, the grand army behind him charged forward. Gu Shubai's hand was like a blade, slashing down in a clean motion. Upon seeing this signal, the members of the Gu family's army rearranged their formation without panicking. It was as if there was not an army numbering in the tens of thousands bearing down on them but a cluster of flies. The officer in charge of leading Western Kun's vanguard was stunned. What is the Gu family's army doing? Are they playing at having an empty city? Regardless of what strategy they use today, we will definitely take Zhuguan today. At Weizhou and Changchuan, Gu Jiugu and Gu Hanamo rearranged their formations and waited for the enemy army to arrive. Based on Gu Huaijiang's observations and speculation based on reports from scouts, today should be the day of the battle. They did not think that after waiting for such a long time, the scouts would repeatedly return with reports that they did not see any sign of Western Kun's army. How can this be? Father and eldest brother both said that Kun Wushang would definitely attack the flanking cities to get some quick victories. Moreover, the army returning from Immortals Valley would be closest to Weizhou. Attacking Weizhou would be their best choice. Could it be they've gone to Changchun? Gu Jiugu could not say for certain what sort of emotions he was feeling. He both let out a sigh of relief and worried that Gu Hanamo would be unable to deal with the situation. He was a year younger, and he had even less experience in leading a battle. What if? Report. Western Kuan's army has gathered in front of Zhuguan, and the two sides are about to start fighting. Another scout returned from the front with a report. Gu Jiugu suddenly stood up from his seat, as his stitched armor creaked with his movements. What? Western Kuan's army is about to attack Zhuguan. The report replied, yes, and young general has already led his troops out of the city. There are no mistakes. Thunk. Gu Jiugu dropped back down into his seat and removed the helmet from his head. In a daze, he held it in his lap. With everything that had transpired, he understood everything. Gu Huaijiang knew beforehand that Kun Wushang would attack Zhuguan and not the two side cities, but he did not directly tell the two brothers, leaving them to worry about this for multiple days. It was clear that Gu Shubai knew about it, helping their father deceive them. Gu Jiugu gnashed his teeth. Father led us astray again. Fuck, the soldiers below did not hear the latter half of what he had said. Second young sir, what did you say? Gu Jiugu tossed his helmet to him and stretched while walking out. I didn't say much. I was just saying that I missed third brother. On Gu Hanmo's side, after he found out about the situation, he would also feel quite irritated. He might feel that only eldest brother was treated like a biological son, while the two of them were just adopted sons whom he could deceive as he pleased. No, they were treated even worse than adopted children. At the very least, Gu Huaijiang would not deceive Yu Fu like this. In Changchuan, after hearing that fighting was about to break out at Zhuguan, Gu Hanamo did not say anything. He just quietly removed his armor. The soldiers were elated, so the fighting wasn't going to happen here. This is great. Gu Hanamo shot him a cold look. Great my ass. He was a person of few words, and he expressed his displeasure with a concise message. The soldier rubbed his nose and did not dare say anything. Gu Hanamo then said, I miss second brother. After we return from this battle, I need to accompany second brother out for a drink. The soldier was perplexed, but didn't third young sir like going along with the eldest young sir the most? Why suddenly mention missing the second young sir? In the past, you really disliked the second young sir, saying that if he was not the elder brother, who knows just how many times you would have beaten him for his love of alcohol and messing around with women. Gu Hanamo coldly snorted, because I suddenly found that second brother and I are the ones who are in similar situations, so we should try to get along. On the battlefield outside Zhuguan, the officer leading Western Kuan's vanguard was so full of steam that he might float off into the sky. My side has 100,000 troops, while the Gu family's army has 30,000. This was a guaranteed victory. He confidently directed the soldiers during the attack but quickly found that he had started celebrating too soon. Visit Wuxia World. EU for extra chapters. When his grand army charged into the Gu family's army's formation, a loud cry sounded from behind the hills nearby. Tens of thousands of soldiers from the Gu family's army rushed down the hills. Waving their swords, they bore down on them. Did they not say that the bulk of the Gu family's army had gone to Changchuan and Weizhou? The sudden onslaught caused great disruptions in the ranks of Western Kuan's army. Western Kuan's soldiers fell into disarray. When they started looking for their own officers, they found that they had already fled at some point. In an instant, soldiers started abandoning their armor on the battlefield. The Gu family's army pursued them, and the tables were quickly turned. Western Kuan's army was slaughtered while they fled, and the killing did not stop even after they crossed over the border. This was the second time that the killing had continued even after they crossed the border. During the counterattack, Yu Fu stayed at Gu Huaijiang's side while holding her breath in anticipation. Gu Huaijiang said, "Don't worry. I understand my son and my soldiers. Even if it was 30,000 against 100,000, they would not lose." The Gu family's army was always stronger than the army that Western Kun hastily cobbled together. More importantly, they had a numerical advantage. Yu Fu nodded vigorously. "Head General, the army that you had sent away was never sent to Weizhou or Changchuan. Instead, they have been waiting outside Zhuguan. Kun Wushang definitely thought that you really sent the troops to the two side cities. That's why he dared to come and attack Zhuguan." Gu Huaijiang faintly smiled. "If I didn't let him see my troop movements, how could he dare attack? All is fair in war." Kun Wushang thought that he was the one deceiving his enemy, but Gu Huaijiang had seen through his ruse from the very beginning and had actually deceived him. Yu Fu said, "Western Kun soldiers all believed that Zhu Guan's defenses would be weak, but now, they're fleeing after a defeat. The military prestige that Kun Wushang had been wanting has failed. After this battle, Western Kun's army will likely need to return to court. What do you think?" Gu Huaijiang nodded his head in approval. "Well done. If Western Kun's army had not lost this battle so terribly, Kun Wushang would definitely try to fight once more. Now, if he wants to fight again, the soldiers will not listen to him." Yu Fu lowered her head in thought. Kun Wushang was never a general. He was a prince. The soldiers under his command were part of the Lu family's army and the Wang family's army. They never trusted him from the beginning. The trust that had been built up from his use of poison was lost from his days spent confined in his tent. After such a horrific defeat today, it will have completely disappeared. Then after he returns to court, he will definitely be suppressed by Western Kun's crown prince, right? Kun Wushang was originally given power by Emperor Kun to spread the power out. Without him, Crown Prince Kun Junhua will be able to take the power for himself. For some inexplicable reason, Yu Fu was a little worried for Kun Wushang. He had clearly done a number of horrible things. He gave Yin Shuo the poison that nearly killed Gu Shubai, he poisoned Gu Huaijiang's study, and now he killed tens of thousands of the Gu family soldiers with poison. Even now, the poison remained in the soil. But she could not help but think of how things were back in Immortals Valley. The scenes of them running around and laughing. Gu Huaijiang said, "Don't worry. Emperor Kun would not allow Kun Junhua to knock down Kun Wushang. Once Kun Wushang falls, Emperor Kun and Kun Junhua would need to meet on even terms. That would make things even more difficult for Emperor Kun." Head General means to say that Emperor Kun is using Kun Wushang as a shield to protect himself against Kun Junhua from taking any open or covert actions. Gu Huaijiang fell silent, and Yu Fu did not say anything else. This was a story that they had seen all too often with imperial families. There were fathers that did not act like fathers, sons that did not act like sons, and brothers that did not act like brothers. In the distance, the Gu family's banner billowed in the wind, and it was drawing closer to the camp. It was only now that Yu Fu started smiling. Gu Shubai rode at the front. He rode through the wind with a bright smile on his face, his eyes shining like stars. The rush of wind caused the red tassel on his helmet to wave and moved his horse's mane. He looked truly heroic. He called out to her, "Yu Fu, I'm back." She smiled at him and waved to him, her face filled with joy. On the battlefield swept by the autumn wind, a small group of daisies stubbornly extended its tendrils and blossomed beautifully. Chapter 311 Hold You Like This or Like That, Part 4. 3 days later, Western Kun's army packed up and left. Despite knowing that Kun Wushang had suffered a complete defeat, Gu Huaijiang still decided to stay for another 5 days in the event that Western Kuan's army decided to turn around. From the highest point of Zhu Mountain, Western Kuan's army path of retreat could clearly be seen. Gu Shubai had carried Yu Fu up the mountain on his back, and he put her down when they reached a flat area. Initially, there was no need to bring Yu Fu along, but Gu Shubai knew that she felt merciful toward Kun Wushang, thus he went out of his way to bring her up to take a look. After seeing it with her own eyes, she would likely feel a little more at ease. Yu Fu looked to the other side of the mountain. Western Kuan's large army left in a long line along the main road. The distance was too great, so their faces could not clearly be seen. Who knew what sort of expressions they were wearing? But the despair and sadness emanating from the group could be seen no matter the distance. When they came, they were a grand army of 250,000 troops. When they left, all that remained were these defeated soldiers and generals. It's truly an embarrassing sight. Yu Fu saw a bright yellow banner in the middle of the group. That was a sign of the imperial family. Kun Wushang should be there. Gu Shubai said, though the Gu family's army has won a great victory, there are far more dead and injured than in previous battles. The only thing worth rejoicing over is you using the large quantities of medicine sent by the court to improve the water and soil conditions at Zhuguan. At the very least, the water in the wells can now be consumed. Yu Fu said with relief, that's right. I even saw some chrysanthemums blooming in the wilderness a few days earlier. Though they were small, they are indeed new life. I don't know if the trees that were poisoned will be as resilient as the smaller flowers. The two stood side by side at the top of the mountain. As the mountain wind howled, Gu Shubai removed his cloak and wrapped it around her. She was already wearing a cloak, and now another one was wrapped around her. With the two coats layered on top of each other, the lower hem was only slightly lifted by the wind. Yu Fu looked down. Eldest brother, are you not cold? With it being so windy that it seemed as if a person could be blown away, Gu Shubai just steadily stood there. He did not look cold in the slightest. I carried you on my back for an hour. I'm just starting to feel hot, so how could I feel cold? This was true. Yu Fu's face turned slightly red, then on the way down the mountain, I'll walk on my own. When I was in Immortal's Valley, I also traversed these sorts of mountain paths. I will be fine. Compared to Zhu Mountain, Immortal's Valley's mountains were like small hills. Gu Shubai pointed down the mountain, look down there. If you aren't afraid, I will let you walk on your own. Yu Fu had ridden on his back on the climb up and did not notice how steep the mountain was. Looking down, the cliff was almost perpendicular to the ground. She swallowed some saliva and thought about how she should retract her braggadocious words from earlier. Gu Shubai held her hand and pulled her a little closer. Don't stand too far away. You're wearing a lot and are like a snowball. If you lose your step, you'll roll down the mountain. Yu Fu did not agree with this. I've already reached your shoulders. How can I be like a ball? When she was younger, she was short. With all of the thick clothing that she wore during winter, it was fine if everyone said that she was like a ball, yet he was still saying it. She would not accept it. All right, you aren't like a ball. Zhu Mountain is very steep. Even if you aren't a ball, you might still roll all the way down the mountain. It would be best to obediently stay up here. He squatted down to allow Yu Fu to climb onto his back. Yu Fu looked down the mountain once more and suddenly recalled the snakes that they had mentioned in the letter. It seemed to have taken place on this Zhu Mountain. Eldest brother, where were you guys surrounded by snakes? Gu Shubai turned around and walked around a bit. It was around here. Then where did you find the multicolored gem? Gu Shubai thought for a bit and pointed at the path going down the mountain. After using the pouches that you gave us, we escaped down the mountain along this path. When we felt that the snakes would not be able to catch up for a while, we stopped to rest for a moment. Thinking that it might be effective, I applied some of the medicinal powder from the pouch to the soldier that had been bitten. At that time, I just happened to see that multicolored gem. Yu Fu listened to his telling of what happened that day and did not feel any fear. She just found it entertaining. Why did eldest brother think of using the powder from the pouch on the wound? That powder can indeed treat snake venom. That soldier was saved, right? Gu Shubai nodded. That powder smelled like it might be able to treat venoms, thus I tried the only medicine that I had. Even if we had rushed down the mountain without stopping, it would take just under an hour, and I fear that that soldier would not have been able to hold out. Yu Fu looked at him with a smile. Eldest brother is really smart. Then if we follow this mountain path, we might be able to see another multicolored gem. She stood in front of him with both arms raised, gesturing for him to pick her up from the front. The path down the mountain is too steep. If I am pressing on you from the back, both of us will roll down the mountain. Wouldn't it be better to hold me like this? Gu Shubai did not know whether to laugh or cry. To hold her like this, what did that mean? Did she want to hang off of him as a koala hung from a tree? He lowered Yu Fu's hands, then placed her entire body on his shoulder. Caught off guard, Yu Fu let out a startled cry. This is more convenient. With a wicked smile, he started descending the mountain. Yu Fu did not dare struggle, fearing that any disturbance would send Gu Shubai tumbling down the mountain. She quickly found the benefit to being carried like this. Eldest brother, slow down a little. I can see the ground from this position. I might be able to find a multicolored gem. I gave the gemstone that you sent back last time to His Majesty. Visit Wuxia World. EU for extra chapters. While Gu Shubai walked, he asked, why did you give it to His Majesty? That gem was specifically given to you as a keepsake. Who knew that you would actually turn around and give it to someone else? Yu Fu hastily explained, you just put it in an envelope. How could I know that you were giving it to me? I thought that head general, second brother, or third brother found it. Gu Shubai was merely teasing her. Then why did you give it to His Majesty? At that time, news of head general crossing the border to attack Western Kuan's army had reached the capital. I was worried that someone in court might use that to denounce the Gu family's army, so I thought that I would have the upper hand by making the first move. His Majesty saw the multicolored gem of triumph and rejoiced. When the military report came, he would only see the victory and would not quibble about the methods. Gu Shubai smiled and returned her compliment. Yu Fu is really smart. When the last letter from home came, Gu Xiang and Gui vividly described your actions in the palace that night. Father was extremely surprised. When was the letter sent? Why did I not see it? Yu Fu wiggled around in dissatisfaction, and Gu Shubai put her down on a rock next to the path. This was where he had found the previous multicolored gem. The entire letter was about your actions in the palace that night. Father determined that you would not want to see it, thus we did not show it to you. Yu Fu was frightened. Oh no, what did fifth brother and sixth brother say about me? Those two have always been prone to exaggeration, and they definitely made it sound very frightening. I must see it when we get down from the mountain. Gu Shubai snorted. The two of them usually don't exaggerate. It's only when praising you that they exaggerate without any limits. The two of them were just like Yu Fu's little footmen. Once Su Yunyan married into Marquis Gu's manor, there might be 3 little footmen. Gu Shubai thought about this and could not help but let out a laugh. Yu Fu hastily asked what he was laughing at. It's nothing. I just think that the two of them are very strange. Even when they praised father or me, they would never be so open with their praise. Yu Fu said, naturally, how can they exaggerate when praising their own father or brothers? If others heard it, they would definitely say that the people of Marquis Gu's manor are too lacking in humility. Gu Shubai then asked her, "Aren't you their eldest sister-in-law?" Humph. Yu Fu started choking upon hearing those words. She started blushing and did not know how to respond. She could not always be left speechless by him saying that sort of thing, right? Yu Fu searched the ground for a possible retort and suddenly saw a shiny object next to her foot. Letting out a cry, she raised her foot and dug that thing out of the ground. Impressively, it was a multicolored gem the size of an egg. "Eldest brother, look." Yu Fu used her handkerchief to wipe the mud off of the gemstone. The gemstone revealed its original appearance, and the light of the multicolored gem shone. It was far more beautiful than any other gemstone in the world. She said that she wanted to find a multicolored gem as a joke, but who knew that she would actually find one? The previous multicolored gem had also been found here, and it was only the size of a fingernail. That one was already exceptionally beautiful, but this one was the size of an egg. Yu Fu was overjoyed, while Gu Shubai held her hand to take a look. After being stunned for a moment, he started laughing. Yu Fu said that she would look for one, and she found one. Was she a deity who had transformed? It seems that the heavens show great care for my Gu family's army. Both victories have resulted in finding multicolored gems. Yu Fu, you really are our little lucky star. He hugged Yu Fu tight, rejoicing like a child. Yu Fu was stunned and shyly pulled her hands out from his embrace. The previous multicolored gem was given to His Majesty, so what should we do with this one? Chapter 312 A Different Idea, Part 1. It was late in the autumn night, and the watchman was fiddling with his clapper when a dull voice shattered the tranquility of the night. "The air is dry. Be careful with the candles." Along the side of the road was a pile of fallen leaves from an unknown type of tree. Below the tree, a blue sedan hastily rushed past and quickly disappeared down the road. The watchman was an older man. Believing that his eyes were deceiving him, he rubbed his eyes and found that there was nobody there. He must have been mistaken, and he continued down the long road. 2 red lanterns hung in front of the eldest prince's manor. The lofty and resolute appearance of the entrance under the lanterns made it apparent that it belonged to the imperial family. When the blue sedan arrived, someone immediately opened the manor's gates and welcomed the carriage inside. The lofty gates were then closed once more, and it was as if nothing ever happened. "Lord Prime Minister, His Highness welcomes you." One of the manor's servants came forward and bowed next to the sedan. The sedan leader pushed the bamboo rod down, and Yin Shuo stepped out. Taking a closer look, the one to come and receive him was not a servant. It was eunuch Chiao from the eldest prince's manor. When a prince became of age and left the palace to establish himself, and when a princess got married, they would not be allowed to bring out any of the palace servants who served them. They would only bring along a few whom they trusted. As a result, the only palace servant who could accompany the princes and princesses out of the palace were people who were favored by their masters. For the eldest prince to send eunuch Chiao out to receive him, it was clear how much importance the eldest prince attached to him. Yin Shuo smiled. "I've troubled eunuch Chiao with receiving me." Eunuch Chiao moved to the side with a smile and led him toward the eldest prince's study. The inside of the study was dim, and the lights from the candles were like tiny glowing beans. After eunuch Chiao left, only the eldest prince and Yin Shuo were left inside the dim room. The eldest prince modestly said, "I've troubled Prime Minister with coming here in the middle of the night." Yin Shuo picked up his hot cup of tea and took a sip. As some of the chill dissipated from his body, "It's fine. There won't be any shortage of people from the second prince and Princess Danyang's side listening in. Coming to your highness manor to speak is more convenient." The eldest prince and the second prince's manor would often have visitors. This included court officials, advisors, and their patrons. Even if someone saw a sedan enter the eldest prince's manor in the middle of the night, nobody would think that Yin Shuo was inside. The eldest prince said, you said that you had something important to discuss with me. Have you already come up with an idea? The tea was a little hot, but this heat was perfect. Inshuo took tiny sips and did not rush to answer the eldest prince. He knew what idea the eldest prince was talking about, and he knew just how pressed the eldest prince felt. He was deliberately trying to stir up the eldest prince. Does eldest prince recall that His Majesty would go hunting at the hunting ground every 2 or 3 years during the autumn? The eldest prince paused for a moment. Naturally, I remember. Thinking about it, Father Emperor has not gone hunting in 3 years. The plan was to go hunting this year, but Western Kuan's army invaded, thus Father Emperor needed to suffer in solidarity with the civilians on the border and soldiers who went to fight. It's natural that he could not go hunting. Inshuo said, naturally, he could not go during the fighting, but Marquis Gu has already won. I expect that he will quickly return in glory. Based on his loyalty to His Majesty, I believe that we won't have a chance to make a move once he returns. Make a move? What move? The eldest prince's gaze became wary. The matter of Imperial Consort Xian poisoning Emperor Ning was nearly exposed, and he was still having nightmares of Emperor Ning finding out about it. To have him make another move, he might not have the gall to do it. Inshuo was a little disappointed. I originally thought that eldest prince was bolder and more intelligent than the second prince, daring to gamble with the world on the line. It seems that I overestimated your highness. The eldest prince glanced at him and spoke through gritted teeth. It's not that I am cowardly and afraid to do anything. The previous incident was exposed, and you know about it. There may be other court officials who know about it. Once this gets found out, my imperial consort mother and I might not be able to survive. At that point, what world is there worth talking about? But it was never exposed. The deity of medicine did not want to get entangled in court affairs and deliberately avoided the matter, and His Majesty still does not know about it. As for me, I came to help your highness. I happened to hear Princess Danyang say that His Majesty intends to establish the second prince as the crown prince. Although it hasn't been brought up recently, who knows when he will bring it up again. He sneeringly looked at the eldest prince. His Majesty is someone who has been treated by the deity of medicine. At the very least, he will be able to live into his 80s. By that time, how old will eldest prince be? Will you still have the energy to fight against the second prince? Rather than waiting for His Majesty to die of old age and hand the throne down to your highness, it would be more beneficial to ask the second prince to disregard past disagreements. The eldest prince gritted his teeth and glared at Inshuo in silence. He sized up Inshuo. At the same time, he contemplated what Inshuo said. The great crime of murder was not something that he could plot with just anyone. There is one thing that I do not understand, so I must ask Prime Minister Yin to explain. Visit Wuxia World. EU for extra chapters. Inshuo spread his arms with poise. Please ask away, Your Highness. Inshuo will definitely answer any question without any reservations. The eldest prince said, this prince first came up with the scheme because I knew Father Emperor planned to establish the second prince as the crown prince. He and I are born of the Empress and eldest, respectively. Based on the system in place, we both have a claim to inherit the throne. Even if we competed, we should be on an even playing field. But once the Eastern Palace is established, the situation will be completely different. Does Prime Minister understand what I mean? Inshuo said, I understand. You're saying that the situation at that time was dire, and if you did not do anything, it would have been akin to giving the Eastern Palace away. But things are different now. Now, His Majesty is suspicious of both you and the second prince. It's impossible to say who will move into the Eastern Palace. That's why Your Highness feels that there's no need to make any dangerous moves right now. Is that right? The eldest prince's silence was his answer. He admitted it. Enchanting had said what he was feeling. Enchanting smiled. There are times when the whirlpool on the surface is not the only danger lurking. The tides under the water are the true and unseen threat. Your Highness said it yourself. It's possible that I am not the only one in court who knows about that matter. In truth, even if others knew, it's fine. They don't dare say it, but there is one exception. The eldest prince shuddered. You are certain that someone else knows about it? Who is it? Who else could it be? Of course, it's Marquis Gu. The eldest prince placed his hand on the desk and suddenly clenched his fist. How could that be possible? If Marquis Gu knew about it, Father Emperor would have found out long ago. How could he have allowed me to continue living until today? Enchanting said, this is just my speculation. Your Highness, please do not get so nervous. The deity of medicine said that he would not get involved in court affairs, but Yu Fu and Tian Shu also went inside. Would they tell the people from Marquis Gu's manor? That's the first point. Second, the deity of medicine and Marquis Gu's manor are connected through their children's engagements. Normally speaking, he should tell Marquis Gu to provide him with some time to prepare himself. It's possible that Marquis Gu does not want to cause any problems, thus he has not revealed it. It's also possible that the eldest prince picked up where he left off. It's possible that he has already revealed it, but Father Emperor is pretending to not know and has not made a mention of it. This sort of thinking made him completely horrified. If this was true, even if he waited 30 years, there would be no hope of being given the throne by Emperor Ning. Taking a step back, this meant that if Emperor Ning suddenly changed his mind and appointed him the crown prince, Gu Huaijiang, as someone who knew the truth, would definitely stop him. The possibility of him becoming the crown prince was basically zero. Enchanting slightly nodded. Eldest prince has picked up on things quite quickly. It's clear that you suspected that Gu Huaijiang knew the truth. You have been deceiving yourself, thinking that the people of Marquis Gu's manor maintaining their attitudes toward you means that they don't know the truth. Unfortunately, you can only deceive yourself but not others. The eldest prince's face froze, and he started sizing up the person in front of him once more. Gu Huaijiang was someone who had been part of the court for decades. He commanded tens of thousands of troops and was the subject of much suspicion, yet he was able to maintain the glory of Marquis Gu's manor. Aside from being a general with great military contributions, he also had a mind for schemes. It was fully possible that he knew the truth behind Emperor Ning's poisoning but did not say it. Enchanting was young and only just entered the court a short time ago, but he had a hold of something that could be used against him and had been waiting for an opportunity. Faced with such a schemer, he was made to think deeply once more. It was fortunate that this sort of person did not side with the second prince. The eldest prince said, they won at Zhuguan, and rumors say that Western Kuan's army has already retreated. Someone like Marquis Gu will wait for a few more days, so it will be at most 1 month before they return. What idea does Prime Minister have that can be put in place in under a month? We can't use the same method as before. Since being treated by the deity of medicine, he has been very healthy. Any small malady would attract a great deal of attention. Enchanting laughed and said, naturally, we can't use the same method. That's not to mention the fact that Yu Fu will rush back if His Majesty is poisoned. Let's just say that it's highly likely that Marquis Gu knows that Your Highness previously poisoned His Majesty. If His Majesty were to die from being poisoned, Marquis Gu would know that Your Highness did it without even needing to think about it. Even if he didn't say anything, when it came time for the officials to choose between Your Highness and the second prince, whom does Your Highness think Marquis Gu will support? The eldest prince froze. If Marquis Gu really knows that I was the one behind the poisoning, he will never support me and will instead support the second prince. With the troops under his command, he has great prestige. When that time comes, would the new emperor not just be whomever he supports? He furrowed his brow and fell deep into thought. Even if His Majesty died, he would not reap any benefits. That's why we will use a different method, and it will have everyone think that it was the second prince who targeted His Majesty. Does your Highness still remember what I just said about going hunting? Chapter 313 It will hurt a lot, and you must endure. Part 2 News of the victory at Zhuguan quickly reached the court, and Emperor Ning was overjoyed. The grand plans to go hunting during the autumn had been cancelled due to the battle, but after the report, the Board of Rites brought up the autumn hunt once more. Your Majesty, the autumn hunt is a grand occasion and an important rite for the ruler. Because of the importance of the battle, Your Majesty wanted to share the suffering of the soldiers fighting on the border, thus we subjects did not dare bring it up. Now, however, victory has been achieved on the border, and the rite cannot be ignored. Your Majesty, please order for the autumn hunt to be organized. With the officials bringing it up, Emperor Ning realized that he had not hosted an autumn hunt in 3 years. Ever since he had recovered from his illness, he had been wanting to go out and get some exercise on the hunting grounds. It would keep him from staying cooped up in the palace and getting sick from boredom. Hearing the autumn hunt get brought up, the eldest prince stood in place, as his heart leaped into his throat. Father Emperor should agree, right? No, we shall not go. Marquis Gu still has not returned, nor have Shubai and the others. What's the point in us going alone? The minister for the Board of Rites was momentarily speechless before remembering that Gu Huaijiang and Emperor Ning had gone to the autumn hunt together in years past. Gu Huaijiang would lead his Gu family's army in providing security for His Majesty, but that would be glorifying it. In truth, it was just 2 old friends going hunting. This year, since Gu Huaijiang was still at the border and had not returned, Emperor Ning did not even want to go hunting. He cast a pleading look toward Minister Qin for help, and Minister Qin paused for a moment before stepping forward to say, Your Majesty, Marquis Gu and the eldest young sir are still at the border. They said that they will be staying for a few days to pay attention to Western Kuan's movements. By the time that they return, it will be winter. Should this year's autumn hunt be delayed until next year? Next year, if he put it off until next year, there would have been 4 years without an autumn hunt. This would be a little improper for such an important rite. While Emperor Ning was still thinking about it, the eldest prince stepped forward and said, Father Emperor, the autumn hunt is related to the nation's prestige. It's precisely because Marquis Gu has obtained victory on the border that the court should hold the ceremony to promote our Easternlings' prestige. Let those ambitious people of Western Kuan see that though we in Easternling are cultured and well-read, we also have the skill to ride and hunt. These words reached Emperor Ning's heart, and he nodded. Marquis Gu has worked hard at the border. If they are ordered to rush back to participate in the victory banquet, it would be forcing them into a difficult situation. Forget it, let us organize the autumn hunt as it was before. The Board of Rites and the Board of War shall make preparations in accordance with the regulations. After court was dismissed, the second prince gave the eldest prince a look of contempt. What a sycophant, you speak as if you were the one who went and won over Western Kuan's army. Yin Shua happened to walk over to his side and heard this quiet remark, Your Highness, why bother quibbling with him? Being able to earn His Majesty's favor in court will result in prestige and many other benefits. It's clear that His Majesty is interested in this autumn hunt. Could it be that Your Highness is willing to give the eldest prince this opportunity? The second prince looked around. Seeing that nobody was looking in their direction, he walked toward Yin Shua. What do you mean by that? Just state it clearly. Yin Shua smiled and said, The eldest prince has already snatched the first opportunity, making His Majesty happy by bringing his opinion to the matter of whether or not to hold the autumn hunt. Speaking well is not as good as doing well. If Your Highness is able to perform better than the eldest prince on the hunting ground, would you not be able to completely overtake him? The second prince furrowed his brow. What you're saying is reasonable, but what's the point of making such a last-minute effort? He was always a step above me when it came to archery and riding, so I fear that it would be hard to beat him. Inshuo said, Your Highness, don't worry. I happen to know an exceptionally skilled individual from Jianghu. He has traversed the entirety of the continent relying on his longbow. Because his family name is Yang, the people of Jianghu gave him the nickname Bai Bu Yang. If your highness is able to receive his instruction, it's not impossible for your skills to improve considerably. Really? The second prince said with elation, Bai Bu Yang, this is a great name. Is this not fitting for that idiom about hitting a willow leaf from 100 paces away? Where is this person now? I will go and learn archery from him immediately. Inshuo gave a profound smile. This person lives in Nail Alley. If your highness sends someone to inquire, you will find him immediately. At that time, would it not be easy to invite him to teach you at the second prince's manor? If such a talented person was discovered by Ning Yizhao first, it would have been bad. This prince will be going first and will thank you at a later date. The second prince patted him on the shoulder then hastily left the palace. Inshuo cupped his hands and watched him leave. It was only after he was quite a distance away that he lifted his head and a strange smile appeared on his face. That night, Inshuo did not return to his room from the outer study until past midnight. Before he entered his room, he suddenly stopped in his tracks, and his eyes faintly squinted. There was the smell of someone unfamiliar, and it caused his hair to stand on end. It was not some unique fragrance but some sort of smell. Without needing to smell it more carefully, he was able to guess. He looked around the courtyard and found that there was nothing off about the manor's guards. It should not be an assassin. Who could it be? With a vague idea in mind, he pushed the door open and stepped into the room. Sure enough, he saw a lit red candle on the table, the flame weakly flickering. Through the candlelit room, he saw a murky figure sitting on the bed. He slowly walked into the room and saw Princess Danyang wearing a nightgown embroidered with golden peonies. With how she was silently sitting on the bed, she faintly resembled a painting of a beautiful woman. Hearing Inshuo's footsteps, Princess Danyang raised her head while feeling more and more ashamed. With her eyebrows lowered, she gave him a seductive look. Looking down, she found that her chest was partially exposed under her nightgown, revealing her flawless, snow-white skin. Inshuo's gaze landed on her figure and did not shift away for quite some time. Everything was going as she had hoped. A smile of delight leaked onto her face, as she timidly looked up at Inshuo. You've returned. For an instant Inshuo was stunned. Princess Danyang continued, Second brother said that you expressed your sincerity to him and provided him with a very good archery instructor. In truth, you still think of us as your true family, don't you? Inshuo did not speak, and Princess Danyang believed that his silence meant that he agreed. I have thought about many things. Regardless of what our relationship was before we got married, we are now husband and wife. Don't stay mad at me, alright? Visit Wuxia World. EU for extra chapters. She fully lifted her head, and Inshuo finally regained his composure. He knew why he had been so stunned. It was because Princess Danyang saying that he had returned was said in the exact same tone as Yufu's. Was she copying Yufu? Could it be that she knew that he had feelings for Yufu? Inshuo looked her over and said without betraying his feelings, Princess, why are you so gentle tonight? Doing it so suddenly, I'm not quite used to it. Princess Danyang was a little delighted, pursing her lips and revealing a bashful smile. Is that so? You men really do like this performance, preferring to see gentle and obedient girls. Just like how Just like how everyone likes Yufu. Inshuo slowly walked through her side and sat down. Oh. Who is this everyone? Who likes Princess Zhenjiang? As the man's breath drew closer to her, Princess Danyang's heart raced. She forgot to consider why he would ask such a question. Naturally, the men from the Gu family, and second brother. Did you know? Even second brother likes Yufu. With Yufu being brought up, her tone unconsciously became heavier, and she hastily tried to recover. She then looked at Yin Shuo with a gentle gaze. It turned out that she did not know, and he was simply overthinking things. Yin Shuo smiled and said, "Second prince liking Princess Zhenjiang is naturally something that I know. If he did not like her, how could he be willing to send her such high-quality birdnest?" With this being brought up, Princess Danyang became more and more displeased. The second prince had never given her anything as valuable, yet he gave it Yufu. If they continued with this topic, the atmosphere that had been built up might be ruined, thus Princess Danyang changed the subject. "You've worked hard all day. It has gotten quite late. How about resting up earlier?" "Rest?" Yin Shuo gave her a meaningful look. "Yes, I should rest. Princess should also get some rest. Forgive me for not sending you off." Saying this, he removed the sash from his robes, his slender fingers moving in an elegant manner. Princess Danyang was in a daze from watching. Why did such a despicable person have to be born so handsome? Both embarrassed and angry, she did not know what to do and simply stood up. With her dressing in such a way, did Yin Shuo not know what she meant? He was pretending not to know, and it seemed that he was still angry about her humiliating him and was refusing to consummate the marriage. Princess Danyang had never experienced this sort of thing. She thought that if she descended from her pedestal and personally came to curry favor with Yin Shuo would definitely fall for her feminine charms. She had been overconfident, and that was what led to this humiliation. Blood rushed to Princess Danyang's face, as she turned around and started toward the door. She wanted to quickly get away from Yin Shuo's sight. Who knew that when she turned around, Yin Shuo would grab her hand and pull her into his arms. Caught off guard, she fell into his embrace. What entered her line of sight was the delicate skin of his chest and his refined collarbone. Why you? Having actually reached this point, she was at a loss over what to say. Yin Shuo immediately lowered her onto the bed. "Princess proposed that we sleep together. If I was to refuse again, would it not make people suspect that I am lacking in ability?" Princess Danyang blushed furiously and closed her eyes. With a sneer on his face, a ruthless look flashed through Yin Shuo's eyes. "But it will hurt a lot. You will need to endure it." Chapter 314 Absolutely Do Not Mess Things Up, Part 3. The granny said that a girl's first night will always hurt. Princess Danyang quietly muttered. In her entire life, she had never been as meek as she was now. Right now, she was not some lofty princess. She was just a normal girl waiting for her husband's love. Yin Shuo followed her gaze and looked through the screen. It turned out that the red candle had that sort of meaning. "So you were thinking of this as our first night?" Princess Danyang nodded with her eyes closed. She felt his face above herself, and his breathing was drawing closer and closer. At this moment she was being unprecedentedly gentle, so should he not also be? Princess Danyang said, "On the day of the wedding, you and I were not like husband and wife, but today, I want to become a true married couple with you." Yin Shuo observed her eyes. He could tell that her words were full of sincerity. Everything that the girl had said was true to her feelings. He raised a hand and covered her eyes. With his other hand, he reached under her collar and ripped her thin nightgown off, tossing it to the floor. Princess Danyang was shocked and subconsciously hit her completely exposed body. She pleaded, "Can you blow out the candle first?" Yin Shuo smiled and leaned close to her ear. His breaths brushed against her ear, and his tone did not tolerate any objections. "If I go blow out the candles, the mood will be gone. Don't you want to see how your husband is?" Saying this, he took her hand and placed it on his chest. He then pressed down on her without any reservations. Who knew when it started, as the two made love? The girl's quiet muttering gradually became painful cries. The wet nurse stationed outside the room made a gesture, and led the two grannies away. The event that should have taken place on the night of their wedding had been dragged out to today, but they had finally consummated the marriage. As servants who served Princess Danyang, they could finally feel at ease. One granny quietly said, "The princess' voice was a little pained just now. Could it be that her husband is being too rough?" Another granny covered her mouth and laughed. "It's always the same for newlyweds on their first night. Being rough is better than ignoring her, right? Princess was still a virgin, so it's natural that her first time would hurt." The grannies left with smiles on their faces, as the crescent moon above their heads slowly disappeared behind the clouds, leaving the earth in darkness. The next morning, Diener and the others arrived at Inshuo's bedchamber with the things needed to attend Princess Danyang's daily needs. Inshuo got up early in the morning and went to the outer study. Princess Danyang was still asleep. Diener ordered everyone to wait at the door. "Let's wait a little longer. Princess must be tired from last night. Let's allow her to sleep a little longer." The palace maids thought of Diener as their leader and naturally did not dare make any mistakes. After waiting for another half an hour, there was still no sign of movement from inside the room. Diener paced back and forth outside the room, then finally said, "You wait out here. I will go in to take a look. If Princess wants to get up, I will call for you." She entered on her own. Inshuo's bedchamber was very simple. It had an intellectual style, but it also looked like it was concealing something. To Princess Danyang, it was a little too simple. She quickly looked around and thought to herself that after Inshuo and Princess Danyang consummated their marriage, it would be best if she continued living in the eastern courtyard. That place was larger and more beautiful. It was more suited to Princess Danyang. "Princess, Princess, have you woken up?" she quietly called out. Walking around the screen, she approached the bed and pulled the bed curtain aside. Ah! Not knowing what she saw, she took a step back in horror. Movement suddenly came from the bed. Princess Danyang furrowed her brow and opened her eyes. It was Diener. "Diener, what are you screaming for?" She opened her mouth and suddenly found that her voice was painfully hoarse. She must have screamed too much last night. Thinking about this, she immediately sat up and found that her entire body was in pain. Every single move hurt. Diener hurriedly supported her and placed a pillow behind her before carefully looking over Princess Danyang. Her hair was disheveled, and her face was ashen white. Her entire body was covered in bruises. Inshuo had not even left her any clothes. There was even less to say about the bed. It was a complete mess. The expensive silk sheets were crumpled, and there were torn bedclothes laying on the floor. One could imagine just how fierce the action here last night must have been. Diener said in frustration, "Princess ended up like this after just one night. Your husband is too much of a bully. This servant will definitely go and tell His Majesty and have His Majesty support Princess." Sure, Princess Danyang's entire body ached, but she was smiling sweetly. "What does an unmarried girl like you know? The consummation of marriage is always like this." Diener furrowed her brow. "Really? Though this servant has never gotten married, I have never heard that it would be like this. With the current Princess Danyang, where was there any sign of her attitude of superiority? She was like an abused girl from a fallen family." The sight of her caused Diener great heartache. Princess Danyang herself, however, did not feel this way. "All right, stop it with this expression. Quickly take care of getting me washed up." Laying in the bathtub, the hot water caused the wounds all over her body to sting. She closed her eyes and thought back to last night's lovemaking. Inshuo's expression was completely different from his usual refined look. He was very forceful and very unyielding. There was absolutely no trace of any tender love usually shown to women. The more she begged and pleaded, the more forceful he was. Visit Wuxia EU for extra chapters. She ought to be angry, but for some reason, she felt quite pleasant. However, she would probably be unable to sleep with him again for the next few days. She would not be able to recover without a few days to rest. Next time, she would just need to tell Inshuo to be a little gentler next time. Princess, how about letting this servant apply some ointment? Diener's voice came from behind the screen, and she responded without opening her eyes, her voice slightly hoarse. All right, I believe you will need more than just one container. Yes, this servant will also look for some ointments to help your wounds heal faster. Diener looked through a chest for the medicine and saw a black pair of men's boots step through the door. She immediately stood up and saluted. That person gestured for her to stay quiet, then headed into the room in Princess Danyang's direction. Diener hesitated over whether or not to stop him, but when she thought of Princess Danyang's sweet smile, she decided against it. Walking out of the room, she closed the door behind her. Princess Danyang was still soaking in the bath. Hearing the sound of footsteps, she did not bother looking back. Diener, massage my shoulders. My whole body is in pain. The hands that rested on her shoulders did not belong to Diener. Princess Danyang turned her head in shock and saw Inshuo standing behind her with a smile. From his point of view, he could see her entire body, from her shoulders above the water to her chest below the water and even further down. Her face turned red. Why have you come back? Inshuo bowed to lean close, his chin resting on her bare shoulder. I wish to continue and want to go another round. After saying this, he could clearly feel her shoulders shudder. This made him feel extremely satisfied. Princess Danyang forced out a smile that was uglier than a crying face, but my body is covered in wounds and is still in a lot of pain. Can we wait a few days? Inshuo stood up without any hesitation. Of course, we can. Princess Imperial body is of utmost importance. Princess Danyang rejoiced internally, then heard him say, the manor has many maidservants. I can just find one I like and make her a concubine. Princess, enjoy your bath. I will be going first. Hold it. She gritted her teeth and grabbed his hand. Hardening her heart, she stood up from the bath. Now that she had finally managed to have Inshuo accept her, how could she push him off into the arms of another girl? Even if she needed to endure the pain, she could not just give her husband to someone else. Inshuo turned back with a faint smile. Does Princess have some other instructions? She lowered her head and said, I can, but can you be a little gentler? You can't be so forceful, or I really won't be able to endure it. She was originally a virgin, so the first time after marriage would hurt even without much force, much less Inshuo deliberately being forceful. Inshuo agreed to it. All right, I will definitely be gentler. Saying this, he picked her up from the tub, and Princess Danyang hid in his chest in embarrassment. She just silently cursed this man for being inconsiderate, not even covering her in some clothing. He just placed her on the bed as she was and quickly removed his own clothes. The two then became entangled. Princess Danyang's pained cries started to leak out from inside the room. Diener subconsciously wanted to go in to stop him but was stopped by the wet nurse. This is the sound of joy between newlyweds. Only go in once the princess calls you in. No matter how Diener listened to them, they did not sound like cries of joy. Instead, they sounded full of pain. Wet nurse, is consummating the marriage really always like this? Princess' body was covered in bruises, and her voice was hoarse. How could her husband treat the princess so poorly? Last night, they only just. Now they're starting again so early in the morning. The wet nurse had not yet seen Princess Danyang. Hearing Diener mention bruises, she was a little caught off guard. She wrung her hands. It's normal for newlyweds to seek pleasure. It's not a bad thing. It will be better after some time has passed. Don't worry about it. The young master and princess have finally consummated their marriage. This old servant is elated, so you absolutely must not go and mess things up. Chapter 315 Ning Qingji, That Idiot, Part 4. As the autumn hunt drew closer, because Emperor Ning was in a good mood, he ordered the court's officials and their female relatives to accompany him on the hunt. As the Prime Minister, Yin Shuo was naturally invited. It was just that none of the females of his manor could go with him. Yin Jiao sneered and said, "Is my current appearance not thanks to eldest brother? From now on, I will never be able to go out. He is all too eager to keep me hidden in the manor forever to conceal that unfortunate truth, right?" Peyer listened to her but did not dare respond. Subconsciously, her gaze landed on the scar on her forehead. The scar was dark, and even the imperial physician who had come was unable to do anything about it. If any outsiders were to see her appearance, the Prime Minister's manner would definitely be mocked. The young miss, she, really might never be able to go out ever again. Thinking of this, Peyer felt a great sense of guilt. She regretted trusting the folk remedy that she had discovered. Yin Jiao could not go out, and neither could Princess Danyang. It was as if her body had completely lost its strength. Over the past few days, she could not even get out of bed and was forced to recover in her room. The servants in the manor saw this and felt that something was off. If she was sick, why was an imperial physician not called? After communication between the servants, they found out that the newlywed couple had consummated their marriage. They did not think that their eldest young sir, who was usually very refined and elegant, would also have a vicious side like this. It seemed that a child would soon be born into the Prime Minister's manor. To others, this sort of thing might sound like a joyous occasion. Only Princess Danyang herself knew just how serious the wounds on her body were, but she thought that newlywed girls all went through this sort of thing. She did not think that Yin Shuo was doing this deliberately. Diener and the wet nurse wanted to check up on her, but she refused to let them. She feared that they would say something that could get back into the palace, and that could potentially ruin the relationship between her and Yin Shuo that she had worked so hard to cultivate. Just how much pride did Princess Danyang usually have? Not to mention being covered in injuries, but if anyone dared to step on a toe, they would not be able to avoid the death penalty. Since she said she was fine, right? The servants did not think about it too hard, as they all said that the newlywed couple was going through their honeymoon phase. Things would be fine in a few days. However, after a few days passed, she discovered something unusual that was horrifying. The injuries to her lower body did not seem to be healing. She always felt that there was a pungent fishy smell, and she had no choice but to ask for an imperial physician knowledgeable in obstetrics to come and examine her. After the imperial physician finished the examination, he reservedly prescribed some methods for treatment and prescribed a number of medicines. When he left with a sigh. Unfortunately, Princess Danyang did not see this. "While my husband is accompanying Father Emperor out to the autumn hunt, it's the perfect time to try and recover. I don't want him to see me with my current appearance and while I have this weird smell." Princess Danyang figured that the autumn hunt would last 3 to 5 days. During that time, the wounds on her body would surely be able to heal. Emperor Ning departed the city under the protection of the imperial guards. Along the sides of the road, long curtains were lifted, and the citizens would stand behind the curtains to watch the lively procession. They watched the noble and gloriousness of the procession and noted just how large the group was. Behind Emperor Ning were the members of the imperial harem. Behind the imperial harem were the princes, princesses, and other members of the imperial family. Behind them were officials based on their ranking and even more imperial guards. The location of the autumn hunt was an area not 10 li outside the capital. The expectation was that Emperor Ning and the various guests would be camping there for the next few days. After everyone settled in at the hunting ground, they all went to pay their respects to Emperor Ning. Imperial consort Xian accompanied Emperor Ning the entire time. She would order for more charcoal braziers to be brought in and for another cloak to be given to Emperor Ning. She was very thorough in taking care of him. Eunuch Gao brought a red cloak for Emperor Ning to see. "Your Majesty, please take a look. This is a cloak made from a red fox pelt that was hunted during the autumn hunt 3 years ago. It's rare to find such a great pelt these days." Red fox pelts were naturally red and were more beautiful than the fabrics that had been dyed red. Emperor Ning looked at it and laughed. "That's right. 3 years ago, Shu Bai hunted it and presented it to us. We loved it dearly and told you to take care of it, for we were reluctant to take it out to be worn. Why have you brought it out today?" Eunuch Gao said with a smile, "This servant noticed that your highness was missing Lord Marquis Gu and the eldest young sir. That's why this servant boldly decided to bring the cloak out to the hunting ground. Will your majesty wear it?" Emperor Ning gave him a plaintive look. This old joker clearly knew that he wanted to wear it but just had to ask. Emperor Ning put on the red fox cloak and looked around at the people seated below. He found that Yin Shuo was the only one from his manor present. "Where's Danyang? She loves this sort of lively occasion. Why did she not come out this time?" Yin Shuo stood up to report, replying to Your Majesty, Princess Danyang was feeling a little tired today. She even requested Imperial Physician Guo a few days earlier to examine her. This subject asked Princess if she wanted to come and accompany Your Majesty to this hunt, but Princess said that the Imperial Physician told her to recover, thus this subject did not feel it was proper to force her to come. Emperor Ning thought for a moment. Imperial Physician Guo was known for his skill in obstetrics. It was possible that Princess Danyang was having some problems that a woman might have, and it was not something that Yin Shuo could bring up in front of so many people. As a result, he did not ask any further. Then why did young Miss E not come along? We quite like that girl. She is quiet, gentle, and very literate. We were hoping that she and Danyang could learn from each other and become close friends. Ever since Yin Jiao recited her poem during the spring banquet, Emperor Ning was able to remember her. Yin Shuo said, "Many thanks to Your Majesty for the concern. Your Majesty has surely also seen that my younger sister is not well. In 8 out of 10 days, she suffers from a malady. With this being the case, my father and I very rarely let her go out. Initially, she should have come along with Your Majesty, but her illness has gotten worse again." He claimed that Yin Jiao had some sort of illness, and Emperor Ning did not have any doubts about it. Visit Wuxia World. EU for extra chapters. Girls were fragile, much less that girl, who clearly looked to be born with a sickly constitution. It was possible that her illness could pop up at any time. Emperor Ning did not ask him anything else and turned to ask about the other officials' families. The atmosphere was harmonious, and the second prince was the first one to run out of patience. "Father Emperor, son has recently been training in archery and hoped to be able to go hunting with Father Emperor like Marquis Gu and the eldest young sir. Son does not know if I would be worthy of such an honor, but would Father Emperor please provide some commentary on my archery?" Emperor Ning looked toward the second prince. He usually liked wearing bright clothes that flaunted his status as the prince born of the empress. Today, however, he was wearing a set of plain clothes. It was immediately clear that he had come prepared. He had given his 2 sons the cold shoulder for quite some time, but blood was thicker than water. Seeing the second prince earnestly try to make him happy, his heart started to soften. "We recall that you hated training in martial arts the most. Since you were young, we have always told you too that you must not neglect your martial arts training just because Easternling emphasizes scholarly pursuits. In order to manage the country, you must focus on both martial arts and literary studies." When he mentioned the two of them, the eldest prince also stood up from his seat and respectfully listened to Emperor Ning's advice. The second prince modestly said, "In the past, Sun was too young to understand and failed to understand the efforts that Father Emperor put in. Father Emperor allowed son and eldest brother to go and learn riding and archery at Marquis Gu's manor. Marquis Gu and the young sirs are all talented in martial arts, yet Sun never bothered to train properly. Now, Sun has turned a new leaf and has put in a great deal of effort to train. Father Emperor, please consider Sun's attempt to change and provide some advice." Emperor Ning stood up from his seat with a smile. "Speaking of this, Yizhao did a bit better in his training at Marquis Gu's manor than you did. Don't look at how we have gotten old and very rarely pick up a bow and arrow, but when we were young, we were not any worse than your Uncle Gu." The two princes stepped forward and support Emperor Ning from both sides. The eldest prince smiled and said, "Father Emperor's praise is exaggerated. Son did not train very well either and have fallen behind second brother. Naturally, Father Emperor's skill in martial arts is great. Not even Marquis Gu is able to compare." The former part was deliberately modest, while the latter part went too far with the flattery, and Emperor Ning did not comment. Everyone followed them out, and there were already some targets placed outside. The second prince saluted, then stepped forward, picked up a bow, and shot the arrow. The arrow steadily soared until it landed on the red bullseye of the target. Emperor Ning's eyes lit up. "Good." All of the officials praised him. They had never heard that the second prince was proficient at riding or archery, but seeing him today was an extraordinary sight. The second prince smiled triumphantly, but the smile on his face was modest. "Son did some last-second training and trained bitterly for a few days. It was due to good fortune that I was able to hit the bullseye." Emperor Ning laughed and said, "To be able to have such skill with just a few days of training, it just shows that our son is like us, having talent in riding and archery." Saying this, he turned to look at the eldest prince. "Yizhao, you come and shoot one too." It would be disrespectful for the eldest prince to refuse, thus he had no choice but to step forward. With the second prince's spectacular showing coming before, the pressure on him was great. There were some officials in court who had favorable views of the eldest prince, and they were all nervous for him. If his arrow could not hit the bullseye, His Majesty would definitely favor the second prince, feeling that the second prince more closely resembled him. The eldest prince drew the bow taut, and the arrow was loosed, landing on the edge of the target. How close! It very nearly missed the target entirely. The eldest prince wiped away some sweat. Turning around, he saw that Emperor Ning had a look of dissatisfaction on his face. The second prince was delighted and was on the verge of bursting out laughing. "You should properly learn from Qingji when it comes to archery." Emperor Ning emotionlessly said this, then turned around and returned to his tent, leaving the eldest prince bowed behind him with a humble look on his face. After everyone left, he straightened his back, and the corners of his lips faintly curled up. "Ning Qingji, you really are an idiot. Did you really think that your skill in archery is as good as mine?" Chapter 316 Unintentionally Eavesdropping, Part 1. The next day, the autumn hunt officially began. After Emperor Ning personally lit the incense in an offering to the heavens, he changed into a set of hunting clothes and shot 3 arrows into the sky from the top of his majestic horse. When the last arrow was shot into the sky, everyone raised their arms and let out a loud cry that resounded through the forest and mountains. Emperor Ning rode at the front and headed toward the dense forest. "Follow us. Anyone who is able to hunt a black bear or a wild boar today, we will reward you generously." The officials followed Emperor Ning into the forest, while the female attendees had to stay behind as usual. Queen Yuyang watched the men leave for the hunting ground, while she had to stay and drink wine with the other female attendees. She was absolutely displeased. Imperial consort Xian sat at the camp's head seat and looked down. All of the female attendees were chatting and laughing, creating a very lively atmosphere. Only the princess from Western Kun was sitting there while sadly looking in the direction in which the men had gone. She had heard that every citizen in Western Kun was trained in martial arts, and girls were no exception. It seemed that this princess from Western Kun was itching to go. Princess from Western Kun. Imperial Consort Xian called to her with a smile, and Kun Yuyang immediately came back to her senses, turning to look at her. Your Highness Imperial Consort Xian, what instructions do you have? Imperial Consort Xian said, I see that you really want to go hunting. You look as if you can't sit still. The female attendees nearby looked at Kun Yuyang and could not suppress their looks of disdain. As girls, they should never go out. They were here at the autumn hunt as His Majesty's guests. They should be enjoying the scenery. How could they go and hunt with the men? This was disgraceful, truly disgraceful. Kun Yuyang awkwardly smiled. No, I was just worried for my husband. I fear that he might get hurt while hunting. That's why I have been looking in that direction. She betrayed her feelings, and sure enough, there was a dramatic decrease in the number of disdainful looks. Since she had come to Eastern Ling, she needed to adhere to Eastern Ling's customs. Kun Yuyang repeatedly told herself that, as a princess from an enemy country, it was already good enough that Emperor Ning did not have her dealt with. That she was allowed to marry a young man from the imperial family, her luck could already be considered quite good. She absolutely could not bring Western Kun's customs with her. She could not cause any trouble for her husband. Imperial Consort Xian could tell that she was not speaking truthfully but did not say anything about it. She just raised her cup of wine, and Kun Yuyang immediately responded by raising her own cup. She threw her head back to down the wine in a single gulp. The noble ladies seated nearby looked at her in surprise. She paused for a moment then spat some of the wine back into the cup. This group of noble ladies was a pain to deal with. Kun Yuyang quietly complained to herself and thought about how great it would have been if Yu Fu was here. At the very least, she would have someone who understood her. Hearing about the great victory at the border, but who knew when Yu Fu would be back? They waited until noon, but the men still had not returned. Kun Yuyang was bored out of her mind. She used getting changed as an excuse to leave everyone's sight. She would rather go and spend time in her tent alone than wait with the noble ladies for His Majesty's return. At present, the camping ground at the hunting ground was silent. Kun Yuyang followed the familiar path to return to her own tent. She did not think that all of the tents would roughly look the same, and this was her first time coming here. As a result, she quickly found that she had gotten lost. She walked around and suddenly heard the sound of someone's voice coming from behind a tent. That voice seemed to mention His Majesty, and she stopped in her tracks. That arrowhead is a specially made tip that has a secret mechanism concealed in it. Once it hits its target, it will immediately destroy that person's internal organs. Consider His Majesty's age. If his internal organs are destroyed, he would surely die. Kun Yuyang felt her hair stand on end. She had just gotten lost. Why was she hearing this sort of secret? Who was it that wanted to kill His Majesty? Whose arrow was it? She could not figure it out at all. She could not get involved in Eastern Ling's political affairs, nor did she want to. She turned around to leave but could not rein in her curiosity, as she continued to listen in on the conversation. The second prince thinks that those special arrows given to him by Bai Bu Yang are divine arrows that would allow him to hit the bullseye with ease. How could he know that the hidden mechanism is controlled by people? As long as it is shot in vaguely the correct direction, would it not land wherever we wanted it to land? It was the second prince. Kun Yuyang furrowed her brow. Based on what they were saying, Emperor Ning's life was at risk. Although she was not born in Eastern Ling, Emperor Ning had treated her with kindness. He did not blame her for anything and provided her with a good marriage. This was something that she would always remember. Now that she knew that Emperor Ning's life was in danger, if she acted as if she had not heard anything, would she not be acting too ungratefully? But in the end, she was still the princess from an enemy country. If she brazenly stepped forward like this, would Emperor Ning really trust her? Queen Yuyang was extremely conflicted. Suddenly bumping into a pillar behind her, she inhaled sharply in shock. She thought that there was someone behind her. As soon as she gasped, the voices behind the tent suddenly stopped talking. Queen Yuyang thought to herself that this was bad. She had definitely been discovered. Sure enough, the sound of a sword being unsheathed came from the tent. Queen Yuyang immediately turned and fled. She could not allow them to see her face. Fortunately, she was trained in martial arts and qigong. Aside from a shadow, the opposition saw nothing but a light green corner of fabric disappear behind a tent. A man wearing light green clothes had overheard their discussion. The two exchanged a look and immediately went to report to Yin Shuo. Visit Wuxia World. EU for extra chapters. Perhaps being pitted by the heavens, after Queen Yuyang fled the scene, she ended up finding her tent by accident, and she hastily hid inside. Inside the tent, there was only the one maid who had come with her from Western Kuan. Seeing her, she rushed forward to receive her. Queen Yuyang quickly stripped down and ordered the maid to dress her in more feminine clothing. The maid looked at her suspiciously. Her princess had clearly said that she did not want to dress too fancily when going to the hunting ground, so why was she changing her mind now? But this too was fine. She was not going to participate in the hunting, so why would she dress like a man? The maid cheerfully went off and returned with a pink jacket and an emerald green skirt. Queen Yuyang's face instantly turned green. Emerald green paired with pink, did she want her to look like a lotus flower? This is a little too delicate, isn't it? Queen Yuyang looked around outside the tent and confirmed that nobody was coming. Sitting down on a sofa, she let out a long sigh of relief. The maid miserably said, "Didn't Princess say that you wanted to wear more feminine clothes?" "Princess, what's wrong? You're in such a panic. Could it be that the noble ladies have been troubling you?" No, in any case, I am a member of the imperial family. They wouldn't dare to openly cause me trouble. Eastern Ling's women were weak and fragile. If they wanted to trouble someone, they would do it with their words. For someone like Queen Yuyang, who had grown up seeing the glint of swords and blades in Western Kuan's imperial palace, it was nothing. It could not cause her any harm. What was troubling her now was whether or not she should tell His Majesty about what she had overheard and prevent someone from assassinating His Majesty. If only husband were here. She felt extremely conflicted and helplessly rested her face in her hands. She then listlessly leaned against the table. The maid carefully observed her expression. It did not look like she was missing her husband. Rather, it looked as if there was something urgent. If Princess wishes to see her husband, why not just go and look for him in the forest? Queen Yuyang looked up at her. That's easy to say. Earlier, when I looked in the direction that they had gone in, I was mocked by Imperial Consort Xian for wanting to go hunting with the men. If I really went, would I not be mocked by those noble ladies until I die? She was not worried about being laughed at by others, but she did worry about losing face for her husband and her in-laws. The maid said, "While what you have said is true, if Princess is feeling so troubled, what good is sitting around going to do? If there is something urgent, is being mocked by the noble ladies more important, or is Princess feeling uneasy more important?" Once Queen Yuyang heard this perspective, it seemed as if she had gained enlightenment, and she immediately stood up. Right. If His Majesty is really taken down, I will definitely feel great regret. Saying this, she charged out of the tent. Completely disregarding her maid chasing after her, she rushed into the forest to try and save Emperor Ning. The maid heard something about His Majesty being taken down and was given a great scare. She was afraid that something would happen to Qin Yuyang, but Qin Yuyang had always had a lively personality. Even if she tried to stop her, she could not. Seeing her rush off on horseback into the forest, someone from the site where the noble ladies were gathered noticed her parting figure. Ha! Who was the one wearing pink clothes? Why has a girl gone off in the direction of where the men are hunting? She had even rushed off on horseback, and her form was no worse than any of the men. Imperial Consort Xian overheard this comment and squinted in that direction. She just saw the girl wearing a pink top with a green skirt, which gave her a very delicate appearance. It did not at all match the figure riding off on horseback. That figure was a little familiar, and she felt that she had seen it before. For a while, she could not figure it out, and she turned to Mu Jin. Mu Jin leaned close and whispered into her ear, "Your Highness, that seems to be Western Kuin's princess, Qin Yuyang." Imperial Consort Xian laughed. She said that she was going back to get changed, but it turned out that she wanted to go hunting while we weren't paying attention. That princess from Western Kuin is truly too inconsiderate. She lowered her head and picked up a cup of tea. Suddenly remembering something, she looked up and stared at Qin Yuyang's parting figure. Chapter 317 The Assassination of Emperor Ning, Part 2, Qin Yuyang rode into the forest. When the imperial guards protecting the area saw her barge in, they were shocked. Looking more closely, it was a member of the imperial family. There was no sign of any weapon, thus they decided to let her pass. After all, she was a girl who came from Western Kuin. A commander of the Imperial Guard named Meng Fei laughed and said, "The girls of Western Kuin are trained in martial arts. It's likely that she could not sit still with those noble ladies, so I guess she came to look for Ning Tangshu. There's no need to worry about it. Newlyweds are all like this." He laughed loudly. "This just goes to show how loving those newlyweds are. You little ones will understand once you get married." Qin Yuyang looked around the forest for the group. Off in the distance, she saw a large group of people, and she immediately rushed over. The most urgent matter at this moment was to find Ning Tangshu and tell him about the situation. As a member of the imperial family, he should have a better way of resolving the situation. That would be better than if she mindlessly tried to get close to Emperor Ning and failed. As she approached the edge of the group, quite a few soldiers saw a girl in pink and green clothes approach. While surprised, they subconsciously gave way to let her through. Qin Yuyang looked ahead. "What's the cause of the liveliness up ahead?" One of the imperial guards replied, "His Majesty and the others found a wild boar, and they are about to hunt it. His Highnesses the Princes and the Prime Minister are accompanying His Majesty." Qin Yuyang was immediately given a shock. Which princes? Which princes could it be? Naturally, it's His Highness the eldest prince and His Highness the second prince. The soldier found this a little strange and pointed ahead. "Look, all of the members of the imperial family are there. Will Madam go on your own, or would you like this subordinate to lead you there?" "Ha! No, there's no need. I will go and take a look on my own." She thanked the soldier for his kindness and quickly approached the encirclement. The officials whom she passed looked at her in dissatisfaction. She, however, did not seem to notice. She was just entirely focused on quickly getting close to Emperor Ning. The second prince was right next to Emperor Ning. The threat could come at any moment. She needed to quickly get over there. At the middle of the group was an open area where a wild boar had been encircled. Emperor Ning, the eldest prince, the second prince, and Yin Shuo created a perfect encirclement. Emperor Ning and the second prince were across from each other, while the eldest prince and Yin Shuo were across from each other. Each person took aim with their bows and arrows at the wild boar, and Emperor Ning said with a smile, "Whoever is able to kill the boar today, we will definitely reward you handsomely. Just one day earlier, the eldest prince had just been shown up by the second prince, and he seemed to be in a bit of a rush to have a good showing today. Father Emperor, son will definitely hunt down this wild boar and allow Father Emperor to enjoy the freshest boar meat. The second prince glanced at him, then glanced at Enshuo, and thought to himself that the two people who were disliked by Emperor Ning would definitely want to take advantage of this situation to win Emperor Ning's favor. This was no good. He could not just give such a good opportunity to the eldest prince, otherwise, would his past few days of training not have been in vain. The second prince immediately pulled his bowstring back and took aim at the boar. He was positioned directly across from Emperor Ning. An imperial guard standing nearby found this situation to be inappropriate and wanted to step forward to protect Emperor Ning, but Emperor Ning was in a great mood and waved him back. The boar is on the ground, while we are on our horse. How poor would one's archery have to be to hit us? Moreover, the second prince's skill with a bow was clearly seen by all yesterday. Don't worry. The soldier thought about the scene from the previous day. The second prince's skill was indeed reassuring, thus he retreated to the side. Enshuo and the eldest prince exchanged a glance. One was reassured by their plan, while the other was a little worried. The eldest prince looked at Emperor Ning. He had raised him from when he was young. He was currently looking at the boar with a smile, feeling very pleased with this father-son hunting trip. He thought back to when Emperor Ning had personally taught him to ride a horse. When he was first learning to write, the first character that Emperor Ning had taught him was Ning. It was the Ning of Emperor Ning, it was the Ning of Ning Yizhao, and it was the Ning of the imperial Ning family. Thinking of his own name, all worries and regrets completely vanished. From the very first moment that he could remember, he had always been working hard. He had worked hard in his studies, and he did not dare slack off with his martial arts training, as he desperately tried to win Emperor Ning's approval. Emperor Ning had always said that he valued him as a son and was happiest to have him as his son, but who could have expected that before he was even born, it was already decided that he would not be able to ascend the throne. Ning Yizhao, the yi in his name referred to assisting the ruler. He took a deep breath and closed his eyes. While this was happening, the second prince took aim at the wild boar and shot the special arrow that Bai Bu Yang had given him. Kun Yuyang squeezed through the crowd and suddenly had her arm grabbed. Turning her head, she saw that it was Ning Tangshu. Why have you come? Ning Tangshu did not blame her for acting improperly as she had expected. Instead, he looked a little happy. What is it? I've only been gone for a short time, yet you're already missing me. What sort of time was it? How could Kun Yuyang be in the mood to talk about this sort of thing with him? She turned her head and ran into the encirclement. The second prince's arrow had been loosed, and she subconsciously let out a cry, as she saw the arrow that was flying straight at the boar suddenly change direction while it flew and struck Emperor Ning directly in the chest. It all happened in the blink of an eye. Emperor Ning did not know what had happened, but he felt a sharp pain in his chest followed by an immense pain in his abdomen. He felt as if his heart had been turned to a ball of mush, as blood started to leak from the corners of his mouth and land on his clothes. All that he could see was the look of horror and panic on the second prince's face and the look of calm steadiness on the eldest prince's face. He heavily closed his eyes. Visit Wuxia World. EU for extra chapters. Quickly, save His Majesty. Quickly call for an imperial physician. The crowd became chaotic. The members of the cabinet were all civil officials, and in their old age, some did not come along. With the crowd having no leader, Enshuo, as the prime minister, stepped forward. Quickly send His Majesty back to the main tent at the camp to be treated by imperial physicians. Are the imperial guards here? This subordinate is here. Enshuo pointed at the second prince, who was looking completely horrified. The second prince has attempted to assassinate His Majesty, and the evidence is irrefutable. Immediately have him arrested. His punishment shall be decided when His Majesty awakens. The second prince screamed in a hoarse voice, "Impudence! Who dares? This prince is the prince born of the Empress. With His Majesty no longer here, who dares to touch me?" The imperial guards hesitated for a moment but quickly apprehended the second prince. Who cared what his identity was? He had shot an arrow into the emperor's chest in front of so many people. This was something that could not have been faked. As if a rock had been thrown at a tree, a flock of crows suddenly took flight, as the officials closely followed Emperor Ning's imperial sedan back toward the camp. The eldest prince led the group down the mountain, while Inshuo brought up the rear. Suddenly, he noticed Kun Yuyang. She was wearing a set of pink and green clothes. In the crowd of men, she really stood out. Inshuo rode over to the couple's side and saw the look of horror on Kun Yuyang's face. For her to come up the mountain at a time like this, could it be that she knew something? "Madam Ning, why have you come here?" "When everyone was coming up the mountain with His Majesty, I don't think that I saw Madam." Ning Tangshu also had no clue as to why Kun Yuyang suddenly came up the mountain. Just a moment earlier, something about her seemed off. It was as if she knew that something was about to happen, as she had been staring in that direction. Just as he was about to ask, the second prince's arrow had already struck His Majesty in the chest. Kun Yuyang subconsciously hid behind Ning Tangshu. Emperor Ning had been attacked, but Inshuo did not go and check on Emperor Ning's condition like the others. Instead, he came to talk to her, someone who was completely unrelated to the situation. This made her aware of some sort of conspiracy. Ning Tangshu was very sensitive to his wife's strange behavior and quickly came up with a good excuse. "I've allowed Prime Minister to see something unseemly. My wife said that the women of Western Kun are allowed to participate in archery and riding, and her skills are no worse than mine. How could I allow her to come and mess up something like the autumn hunt? That's why I insisted that she not be allowed to come. Who knew that she would sneak up the mountain and end up seeing His Majesty get attacked, huh?" Kun Yuyang reacted very quickly, miserably holding the hem of Ning Tangshu's clothes. "I just wanted to come up and hunt with everyone. His Majesty did not say that I couldn't. What just happened was too frightening. If I knew that this sort of thing would happen, I wouldn't have come up the mountain. Dear husband, I'm scared." She leaned her head against Ning Tangshu's chest and let out some tears. Inshuo stared at her for a bit but did not see anything off, thus he decided to not question her any further. What happened today was indeed beyond expectation. Who could have expected the second prince would actually attack His Majesty? This official needs to go down the mountain first to check on His Majesty's situation. Please take your time. Saying this, he rode off. After he left, Ning Tangshu clearly felt the person in his embrace let out a sigh of relief. "Yuyang, are you afraid of Prime Minister Yin?" Kun Yuyang looked at him with tears in her eyes. Ever since the day of their marriage, he had not seen her cry again. She was a strong woman, and she knew martial arts. She was cheerful and bold, and she did not like making use of her tears to express herself like the other noble ladies in Eastern Ling. For her to cry today, was it just because she had been frightened by Emperor Ning's assassination? Kun Yuyang said, "Does husband not feel that it was very strange? As the Prime Minister, he did not go to accompany His Majesty and had the time to chat idly with us." Ning Tangshu froze and carefully contemplated her words. Chapter 318 The Metal Chunk on the Arrowhead, Part 3. Because he's the Prime Minister, he might feel that you appearing here was overly strange, and he came to question you because of it. Ning Tangshu thought about it and found this explanation to be most reasonable. Kun Yuyang looked around. Everyone had already left the mountain, and the two of them were the only ones still here. She climbed off her horse and walked over toward where Emperor Ning's group had surrounded the wild boar. It looked as if she was looking for something. With nobody keeping an eye on the wild boar, it had run off. All that remained was the mess on the ground. Kuan Yuyang leaned over and started looking around on the ground. Ning Tangshu also got off his horse and walked up behind her, feeling that she was acting very strangely today. Normally, she would not be like this. Yuyang, what exactly are you looking for? Kuan Yuyang was not in the mood to talk to him. She focused her attention on what was in front of her to try and find some sort of evidence. The two people whom she had overheard said that the arrows used by the second prince were specially made. Once it struck a person, it would completely destroy their internal organs. Such a strange arrow would definitely be built differently from all other arrows. She might be able to find some clues. Ning Tangshu followed along behind her. Finally, she saw a dark piece of metal in the grass and quickly rushed over to pick it up. What is this? Kuan Yuyang replied with her own question, have you never seen it before? Have you seen anything similar on the second prince's arrow? Having been asked this, Ning Tangshu suddenly remembered, when we were coming up the mountain, I was right behind the second prince. He had his quiver on his back, and the arrows inside did indeed have something similar. What exactly is this? He took the piece of metal from Kuan Yuyang's hand and carefully looked it over. It was a ring-shaped piece of metal that was buckled to the middle part of the arrow. It did not seem to have any other purpose than to increase the weight of the arrow. Kuan Yuyang took the piece of metal and led Ning Tangshu further into the forest. I have something important that I absolutely need to tell you. When Emperor Ning was brought to the main tent at the camp, he had already stopped breathing. All of the imperial physicians who had come along were being pushed by the members of the imperial harem and the court officials to save His Majesty. However, nobody moved. There was not even a prescription for any medicine. Imperial physician Sun was pushed forward by the other imperial physicians. He had a good relationship with Yu Fu. Not long after Sun Qi left, he became the most distinguished member of the imperial physicians group because he dared to go and visit Marquis Gu's manor to ask Yu Fu for help. He said with difficulty, let me put it this way. Your Highness, my lords, even if the deity of medicine was here, he could not save someone whose heart has been liquefied. The arrow that struck His Majesty was not a normal arrow. There was some mechanism inside that destroyed His Majesty's heart. No amount of medicine would have any effect. There was a mechanism in the second prince's arrow. Then that's to say that he deliberately tried to assassinate His Majesty. The officials started discussing the matter. Emperor Ning's sudden death caused a great deal of fear and panic. The one to assassinate Emperor Ning was also the one who was most likely to have been chosen as the crown prince. What should they do now? Imperial consort Xian rushed over to Emperor Ning's corpse and wiped away tears with her handkerchief. Your Majesty, you treated the second prince so well. How could he be willing to assassinate Your Majesty? He truly is vicious. Nobody noticed that there were not many tears in her handkerchief. On the contrary, it looked like there was some joy that was barely being contained. Emperor Ning had died, and the second prince was taking the blame. They had succeeded. The throne would surely be given to the eldest prince, and she was about to assume the most esteemed position as Empress Dowager of Eastern Ling. She had to cover up the joy and excitement from this situation with her handkerchief, or it would have leaked out. The officials were at their wits' end. Your Highness, don't cry. Right now, writing a constitution is the most important thing. His Majesty suddenly passed away, so how should things be handled from now on? Imperial consort Xian immediately shot a glance at Yin Shua. This one is a member of the inner palace. How could I know that much? Since the Prime Minister is here, I hope that the Prime Minister can come up with an idea. All of the officials looked toward Yin Shua. Although Emperor Ning had already stopped trusting him, he did not go too far in trying to suppress him. He even married Princess Danyang to him, allowing him to become a husband to the imperial family. It had to be said that when it came to managing the court's affairs, he did very well. Having him take the lead here could not be more appropriate. Inshuo stepped forward. The first and most important thing to do right now is to bring His Majesty back to the capital. It's already getting late in the day. My lords and ladies, let us endure some suffering for tonight and start packing our things. We will leave for the capital first thing tomorrow morning. The second matter is that the country cannot be without a ruler. His Majesty's passing was sudden and did not leave behind a will. Who should be the new ruler? With this sensitive topic getting brought up, everyone became nervous. Was there a need to say it? The second prince had assassinated Emperor Ning and had already been arrested. Aside from him, the prince with the highest hopes would be the eldest prince. Unless Emperor Ning had a will before he died that passed the throne down to the second prince, who would dare suggest him? The eldest prince was confident that the conditions were right and that things were about to go as planned. Who knew that Ji Daogong would slowly step forward from the crowd? He had always been a man of few words. If he stepped forward, it was natural that he would have something to contribute. The officials immediately turned to look in his direction as if he was their guiding light. Inshuo slightly furrowed his brow. Comparing their prestige in court, he naturally could not compare with Ji Daogong. Not to mention him, but not even his father, Yin Yan, could compare. The only one who could compare with Ji Daogong in terms of prestige would probably be Gu Huaijiang. The two officials, one civil and one military, were the ones whom Emperor Ning trusted the most. Ji Daogong stroked his beard and looked around at everyone's reactions. The eldest prince was nervous, Yin Shuo was vigilant, and imperial consort Xian looked a little uneasy. Everyone's expressions were taken in by the old yet keen eyes. Not a single detail was missed. He slowly said, "Prime Minister Yin is right. The most important matter at hand is to escort His Majesty back to the capital to be laid to rest. The funeral must be conducted properly. As for the matter of the new ruler, there is no need to rush. His Majesty's passing was sudden, and he did not leave behind any verbal instructions. It might be possible that there is something hidden in the palace. Also, it's possible that the officials of the cabinet or Lord Marquis Gu, who is still at the border, were given instructions. That's why this old man believes that we should first bring His Majesty back to the capital. Discussion of the new ruler can wait until there has been a discussion between members of the cabinet and after Lord Marquis Gu returns. Imperial guards, immediately send someone to the border to pass along the news. Urge Lord Marquis Gu to rush back to court." "Yes." A voice came from outside the main tent, and they immediately set to work on handling the matter. Yin Shuo's expression was a little ugly. They had not yet accepted Ji Daogong's plans, yet the Imperial Guards were already going to work. It seemed that the commander of the Imperial Guards, Meng Fei, was not on their side. The officials felt that Ji Daogong's recommendations were reasonable, and they all agreed to them. Yin Shuo and the eldest prince were in no place to say anything else. That night, nobody slept. Near the imperial family's main tent, one tent saw the light inside put out early. A young couple lay in bed, tightly embracing one another. Visit Wuxia World. EU for extra chapters. In the silence, Ning Tangshu said, "We should have the maidservant come and light a lantern, right?" Kuin Yuyang grabbed his arm. "No, don't light a lantern. I'm scared. I would rather stay in the dark." Ning Tangshu consoled her. "Yuyang, be a little more understanding. In my eyes, you have always been a smart girl. Tonight, nobody will be able to sleep. Every tent will have some sort of lighting. If we are the only ones without any light, won't it arouse some suspicions?" Kuin Yuyang let go of his arm, and a maidservant came in to place a lantern on the table before quickly retreating from the tent. It fell silent once more. Both of them looked quite sad. Kuan Yuyang gnashed her teeth and said, "Husband, I am someone from Western Kuan. I don't quite understand the political situation in Eastern Ling. I will just say how I see it. If I say something wrong, please tell me. Is that fine?" "Yes." She lowered her voice. The second prince's arrow was tampered with. After he shot the arrow, he panicked and was given no room to defend himself. I, however, believe that he was being set up by someone else. Someone wanted to get the second prince in trouble and also wanted to assassinate His Majesty. The one to benefit would naturally be the one who is most likely to become the ruler. Originally, the one who was more likely to win was the second prince. Now that the second prince has been framed, that would mean, it's the eldest prince. You suspect that this was the eldest prince's scheme? Ning Tangshu shook his head, but Prime Minister Yin's reaction was also very strange. If it was a scheme put together by him and the eldest prince, something would be off. He and the second prince are the ones connected through marriage. Why would he help the eldest prince go against the second prince? Kuan Yuyang said, "What marriage?" To Princess Danyang. The relationship between Princess Danyang and Prime Minister Yin has never been good. During the banquet at Chunhee Garden, we all saw how Princess Danyang humiliated him. Isn't that right? Is it possible that Prime Minister Yin has not forgiven that humiliation, thus he would rather support the eldest prince? If Kuan Yuyang said it like this, it really might be possible. Ning Tangshu said, "Yin Shua is the Prime Minister, but his power was taken away by His Majesty, and he had to endure a haughty noble lady humiliate him. If you say that he was unhappy with Princess Danyang and His Majesty because of this, it's not impossible." Kuan Yuyang anxiously grabbed his hand. "Will you expose this matter? If it really is true that the eldest prince killed his father and ruler, and he still ends up becoming the emperor, what righteousness is there in this world?" Ning Tangshu comforted her while thinking about countermeasures. "As a member of the imperial family, since I know about this, I obviously cannot just ignore it. But right now, this is not the most important problem. Lord Ji has already said it. We will discuss the matter of the new ruler when Marquis Gu returns. Right now, the most important matter is, you." "Me?" "Yes, you." Ning Tangshu helplessly looked at her. "You recklessly came up the mountain today and were already being suspected by Yin Shua. Although we were able to deal with the situation temporarily, Yin Shua might be able to see through some mistakes after a bit of thought. Think carefully, did you really not get seen when you overheard that conversation?" In the quiet night, while everyone else was busily preparing to return to the capital, the eldest prince entered Yin Shua's tent. What happened? The eldest prince's footsteps were hurried, and his brow was tightly furrowed. "What do you mean your subordinates were overheard? Who exactly heard it?" "Eldest prince, don't be so anxious." Yin Shua was much calmer than him. "I have already taught those two subordinates a lesson. When they heard a sound, they went outside, but that person had already run away. They were unable to tell who that person was. Although they could not see their face, they could tell that it was a man wearing dark green clothes." The eldest prince sat down and held a hot cup of tea in his hands. "A man?" "Yes, they said that it was a man." "Does eldest prince have any clues?" The eldest prince remembered that Imperial Consort Xian had said that when Kuan Yuyang rode into the forest, she had been a little strange, but she was a girl. She was also wearing pink and green. It was clear that she was not the man wearing dark green clothes. He shook his head. "I have nothing. We must find that man who was dressed in dark green clothes. If the truth is uncovered by Ji Daogong or Gu Huaijiang, we will be done for." The eldest prince was furious, as he stared at Yin Shua with a decisive glare. Emperor Ning had already died. He no longer had a path of retreat. If he did not succeed, it would all be over for him. Yin Shuo comforted him. "Eldest prince, please sit. There's no need to worry. I have already ordered my people to search the area for this person. The man wearing dark green clothes, even if they are not a threat, I absolutely will not allow this matter to leak." With Yin Shuo's guarantee, the eldest prince felt reassured. "Since that's the case, I will leave this matter to you, but I keep feeling uneasy. Ji Daogong has always been a man of few words. If he did not speak up today, I would already be the new ruler." Yin Shuo laughed. "Eldest prince sure has oversimplified the situation. Even if Ji Daogong did not step forward today, without the members of the cabinet present and without Marquis Gu present, which official would dare to recommend your highness as the new ruler? Nobody has that much sway." The eldest prince thought for a bit and arrived at the same conclusion. "Then what is the plan? When Gu Huaijiang returns, will he oppose my enthronement? What if he really knows about the poisoning? He definitely won't want to let me ascend the throne. If your highness is not allowed to ascend, who will they allow to ascend? Will they have the second prince, who assassinated his majesty in front of everyone, ascend?" Yin Shuo faintly smiled and picked up a cup of tea while feeling completely reassured. One poisoning and one assassination, which one is nobler? Moreover, since Gu Huaijiang did not speak on that matter at that time, he might not bring it up now. As for the second prince's guilt, it is something that everyone in court knows about. How should he oppose your highness' enthronement? Chapter 319 disappeared after waking up, Part 1. When the sun came up, the campsite was already tidied up. The eldest prince had gotten up much earlier. Thinking about how Yin Shuo's subordinates had been overheard made him brood even more. He wanted to ask Yin Shuo about his investigation, but there were people coming and going. In the end, he decided to temporarily avoid doing anything suspicious and went to Imperial Consort Xian's tent. Imperial Consort Xian had already finished getting cleaned up and dressed. She had changed into a set of plain clothes, and there was only a single silver hairpin in her hair. Her complexion was a little pale, and she did not make use of much makeup. It looked as if she was mourning Emperor Ning's passing. Only the eldest prince knew that she was sick from anxiety and fear. "You've come." Imperial Consort Xian saw the eldest prince, and a hint of a smile appeared in her eyes. "Quickly, come and sit. Have a cup of hot milk. We will need to rush back to the capital soon, and it's really cold outside right now." The eldest prince glanced outside the tent. The north wind howled like a displeased beast. He suddenly remembered that Emperor Ning did not say anything before passing away. His heart had been crushed by the special arrow. Before passing away, he glanced at the second prince, then himself, then at Yin Shuo. At that time, nobody was able to react, but the three of them had all clearly seen Emperor Ning's expressions. When he looked at the second prince, his eyes were full of shock. When looking at himself and Yin Shuo, his eyes were full of resentment. He closed his eyes. "That's right. It's really cold." Imperial Consort Xian spoke candidly. "How is it? Has the person who was eavesdropping been found?" "Who was it?" The eldest prince took a sip of the milk. There were milk cows at the campsite, and this milk had been milked from a cow by a servant in the middle of the night. It was very fragrant and sweet. But for some reason, he found the taste a little fishy. As a result, he put the cup down after a single sip. "When I went to see Prime Minister Yin last night, he still had not found them. He guaranteed that he would find that person. It was a man dressed in dark green. Does Imperial Consort Mother have any clues?" A man in dark green clothes. Imperial Consort Xian furrowed her brow but could not recall ever seeing anyone matching that description. The men who could ride and shoot went on the hunt with His Majesty. Only the female guests and Imperial guards stayed here. All of the Imperial guards were wearing their bright yellow military uniforms. As for the women, there's no need to talk about them, hold on. Imperial Consort Xian suddenly remembered something. Are you certain that Yin Shuo said that it was a man? The eldest prince could tell that there was something behind this comment. If it's not a man, does Imperial Consort Mother have a clue? Yesterday, that princess from Western Kuan was wearing dark green clothes. The other ladies were dressed in bright and gorgeous clothes. She was the only one wearing men's hunting clothes. This impressed me quite a bit. The eldest prince furrowed his brow. I saw her yesterday. She was wearing a pink top with a light green skirt. I am sure that it was not a dark green hunting outfit. Imperial Consort Xian quickly said, the clothes that she wore at first were dark green. Later on, she said that she was going to get changed and did not return for a long time. Even later on, I saw a girl riding off into the forest. It was her after she had changed into her pink top and green skirt. All of the clues pointed at Kun Yuyang. Imperial Consort Xian felt that the eavesdropper was her. Quickly go to Yin Shuo and verify that the eavesdropper was a man. After all, she was wearing hunting clothes. If Yin Shuo's subordinates did not get a clear look at her, they might have thought that she was a man. Wouldn't that be a big mistake? The eldest prince immediately stood up. Very well, son will go and ask Yin Shuo immediately. Yin Shuo's tent was brightly illuminated. He did not sleep all night, as he had been sending people to investigate the man dressed in dark green. Eldest young sir, we found that there were 3 men wearing dark green clothes at the campsite yesterday. But these 3 were with His Majesty's group in the forest. They could not have appeared at the camp at that time. Yin Shuo listened to his subordinate's report and fell silent for a moment. Regardless of whether or not they could have been at the camp, have them all killed without fail. This matter absolutely must not be found out by anyone. It would be better to erroneously kill 3,000 than to let the correct person go. Just as the subordinate was about to accept the order, the eldest prince suddenly burst into the tent. A look of displeasure appeared in Yin Shuo's eyes, as he glanced outside. It was only after seeing that there were no people outside that he was barely able to feel a little more at ease. Why has eldest prince suddenly come? The eldest prince glanced at the 2 subordinates standing there before directly saying, Prime Minister, are you certain that the eavesdropper was a man? Yin Shuo did not know why would ask this and looked at the 2 subordinates. These 2 are the ones who noticed that they were being overheard. Eldest prince, feel free to ask them anything. The eldest prince had a fierce look on his face, and one of them quickly said, replying to Your Highness, that person knew martial arts and qigong. When we came out to give chase, all we could see was the corner of fabric that was dark green. Based on that, we determined that it was a man wearing dark green clothes. The eldest prince slapped that person, idiot. Just because they were wearing hunting clothes and knew martial arts, they had to be a man. Indeed, Eastern Ling's women do not know martial arts, but did you never consider that it might be a woman from Western Kuan? Yin Shuo stood up from his seat. Your Highness, what do you mean? The eldest prince hatefully said, Imperial Consort Mother said that Kun Yuyang was wearing dark green hunting clothes yesterday. She changed into her pink and green clothes later on. The girls from Western Kuan know martial arts. She also rushed into the forest at a time like that. Aside from her, who else could it be? Visit Wuxia World. EU for extra chapters. The 2 subordinates immediately recognized their failure and dropped to their knees to beg for forgiveness. This subordinate recognizes my mistake. This subordinate will immediately go and kill the princess from Western Kuan. Hold it. Yin Shuo stopped the 2, that is a princess from Western Kuan and a wife to Eastern Ling's imperial family. Killing her would cause too much of a stir. That guy might look like a playboy, but he is more prepared than anyone else. To kill his wife under his eyes, isn't that easier said than done? They had already determined who it was, but they could not kill her. The eldest prince had completely lost his former demeanor from the anxiety. Then what do we do? Could it be that we have no choice but to let her live and tell others about our secret? Of course not. Shua gave him a profound look. What your highness needs to do right now is to be rational. The court's officials are very sharp. If your highness is unable to stay calm, there won't be any need for Kun Yuyang to tell others. Won't others be able to notice your strange actions? The eldest prince froze for a moment, then took a deep breath. Thinking back from the previous day to the present, he had not acted normally in the slightest. It was no wonder Shua would say this sort of thing. He had personally plotted his own father's death and watched Emperor Ning die in front of him. How could he act normally? He could not act normally, but he needed to act normally. After a while, the eldest prince finally calmed down and said in a heavy voice, "You cannot kill her, then does Prime Minister have a better idea?" Shua nodded and said, "Since the second prince has been detained, Her Highness Imperial Consort Xian and eldest prince are the most venerated ones present. Right now, it would be understandable if eldest prince asked Her Highness Imperial Consort Xian to step forward and ask the Imperial Guards to search the area. Just say that the second prince assassinating His Majesty was a serious matter. It's possible that there are still people with similar ideas. For the sake of everyone's safety, they need to conduct a search." This was a pretty good excuse, and the eldest prince said, "You want to use this opportunity to find out where Kun Yuyang is?" "Yes, when the time comes, we can just find any reason to have her detained. Her identity as a princess from Western Kun is a sensitive matter. Nobody would dare to say a word if she was detained at a time like this." The eldest prince immediately left the tent. "It isn't too late. I will go and talk to Imperial Consort Mother for help." Adding to the sound of packing up the campsite were the sounds of Imperial guards carrying out a search. Their shouting voices made it impossible for everyone to sleep. When their search reached the Imperial family's tents, Ning Tangshu got up and yawned. His vision was hazy from just waking up. Seeing the eldest prince lead a group inside, he had a look of confusion on his face. "Eldest prince, what have you come here for?" The eldest prince looked around but did not see any signs of Kun Yuyang, but he did see Kun Yuyang's clothes on the screen. It was just her pink top and green skirt. He awkwardly smiled at Ning Tangshu. Because the second prince assassinated His Majesty yesterday, Imperial Consort Mother was worried that the other female attendees would be in danger, so she had me lead a group to look around. Where has Tangshu's wife gone? Ning Tangshu did not buy it but let out a snort. It's fortunate that she isn't here, or she would have been seen without her clothes on when eldest prince barged in. Should she abandon her shame and reputation? The eldest prince's expression was a little ugly and thought to himself that this guy was really thinking of himself as someone from the older generation. When it came to actual ages, Ning Tangshu was a few years younger than himself. Just as he was about to speak up, he suddenly heard Ning Tangshu shout outside, "Chueya, where has my wife gone? Has she gone to make breakfast?" The sound of footsteps came from outside, and a maidservant named Shueya came in and bowed, replying to "Young sir, this servant has not seen madam." "Hasn't madam been in the tent this entire time?" Ning Tangshu furrowed his brow. He stood up and scratched his head. "What's going on here? A perfectly good and alive person disappeared after I woke up. Oh no, I've got it." Chapter 320 Going West, Part 2. His sudden outburst caused the eldest prince to take a step back. "Oh no. Someone from the second prince's side must have assassinated my wife. Eldest prince, you must help me save my wife." The eldest prince never thought that he would say this sort of thing and was momentarily at a loss over what to do. Seeing him like this, He did not know if he really did not know where Kun Yuyang had gone, or was he just acting as if he did not know. He simply went along with Ning Tangshu's story. Then before Madame left, did she say anything? Or did she leave anything behind? Ning Tangshu's expression did not change. His Majesty's assassination last night left everyone in a state of panic. What could we possibly have talked about aside from thanking His Majesty for allowing the two of us to get married? As for if she left anything behind, well, it's all in this tent. Eldest Prince, go ahead and take a look. The eldest prince waved his hand. Guards, carefully search the tent. There might be some clues that will allow us to find the madam. Yes. The guards led by the eldest prince had already been given an explanation. They were not looking for anything other than women's clothes and things like that. Ning Tangshu calmly sat to the side and allowed the maidservant to take care of helping him get dressed and comb his hair. After all of that was taken care of, he finally stood up and cupped his hands at the eldest prince. Has eldest prince found any clues? The eldest prince glanced at the people searching below, and they all shook their heads. He had no choice but to shake his head. He was actually unable to find the dark green clothes, and she had gone missing. How should he carry out this search? Ning Tangshu sat down next to the bed and started wiping away tears. Oh heavens, how could my perfectly good wife have disappeared? Apologize to my wife. The eldest prince and the others could not deal with the crying and retreated from the tent. After the sound of footsteps outside the tent drew further away, Ning Tangshu got up and looked outside, then wiped away his tears. Chueya, have those clothes been completely burned? Chueya bowed and said, Madam said that she took it further away and burned it. Don't worry, Madam set out last night. Even if those people want to chase after her, they won't be able to. It's fortunate that young Sir is so smart, figuring that the eldest prince would send people to capture the madam and deciding to have madam leave in the middle of the night. Ning Tangshu let out a sigh. Aside from having her leave, what else could be done? I am alone and have no way of going against the eldest prince. I'm just worried that she might run into some danger on her way west. The trek would be through strong winds, and the road would be bumpy. He was worried that she might catch a call, that she might fall from her horse, or that she might run into an evil person. He desperately wanted to be by her side, but he could not do that. There were more important matters for him to handle in the capital. He needed to stay here. Chueya paused for a moment. Our madam is able to endure it. She will definitely be fine. Moreover, the Gu family's army should currently be on its way back. If madam runs into them, there won't be any need to worry. Ning Tangshu nodded. That's right. She and Princess Zhenjiang get along so well. Princess Zhenjiang will definitely help her. I hope that they meet as soon as possible. After he said this, he started walking out of the tent. Chueya shouted to him, Young sir, where are you going? As a member of the imperial family, it's natural that I should be next to His Majesty's remains and escort them back to the palace. The howling wind outside covered his voice, and Chueya watched his parting figure move further and further away. There was a hint of determination in his movements. Kun Yuyang headed west on a galloping horse. Visit Wuxia World. EU for extra chapters. At the start, she would occasionally look behind her. After verifying that there were no soldiers giving chase, she turned all of her attention to the road ahead. When she passed by a ravine, she lit the dark green clothes on fire and tossed them down the cliff. Ensuring that there was nothing left, she continued to go west. She had previously traveled along this official road. At that time, it was spring. On Emperor Kuan's orders, she was going to Eastern Ling's capital for a political marriage. It was called a political marriage, but it was actually meant to deceive Eastern Ling's people into thinking that Western Kuan truly wanted to improve their relations with Eastern Ling. The her of that time was constantly looking at the horses outside. She thought that if she could see the scenery that Eastern Ling had to offer, she would be able to die without any regrets. Who knew that after Western Kun started their assault, Emperor Ning would not have her executed and would allow her to get married on schedule. It had only been half a year, but much had changed, yet she was on this road once more. When she was coming to Eastern Ling, she was full of despair and fear. Now, she was resolute and wanted to reveal the truth. She could not allow the eldest prince, someone who killed his own father and ruler, to succeed. She could not allow Inshua, who was completely opposed to Marquis Gu's manner, to succeed. She could not allow the kind Emperor Ning to have died in vain. The cold wind blew in her face and felt like being cut by tiny blades. She had left in a hurry, and she was wearing a brocade dress that the noble ladies in the capital would wear. It was exceptionally beautiful but did not block the wind. She had no choice but to grit her teeth, as she did not dare to stop for rest. Off in the distance, the sun was starting to rise. Whoa! Kun Yuyang pulled on the reins to stop her horse. She figured that Emperor Ning's body should already be on its way back to the capital. Who knew just how this situation might progress? Would her husband be suspected by the eldest prince and meet with an accident? She did not dare think too hard about it. There was just one thought in her mind, and that was to move quicker. As long as Marquis Gu knew about this matter, he definitely would not just ignore it. The horse set off once more, and all that could be seen in the warm yellow light was the figure of a resolute girl. There was also a long line of tracks from her horse's hooves. Chapter 321 A Triumphant Atmosphere, Part 3, The One Sending the Message to Zhu Guan, Have you already set out? While the rest of the officials were gathered around Emperor Ning's bier, Ji Daogong took advantage of the situation to walk away to the side of the tent. A servant cupped his hands and said, "They have already gone. Does my lord have any other instructions?" His Majesty passed away, and the Imperial Guards are without a leader. Right now, we will obey Imperial Consort Xian and the eldest prince's orders. For the sake of avoiding any mishaps, this official can only feel at ease after I have sent one of my own people with the message. The servant was shocked. "My lord, that means that you suspect Imperial Consort Xian and the eldest prince." Ji Daogong gave him a muted look. "This old one does not suspect anyone. It's just in case something happens. There's no need to ask any further." As he said this, he pulled out a letter from his pocket. This is a letter that this old man personally wrote. Marquis Gu recognizes this old man's writing. This letter absolutely must be delivered directly to Marquis Gu. Do you understand? The servant did not dare ask anything else. Receiving the letter in both hands, he placed it into his pocket. Yes, this servant will go immediately. When the Gu family's army set out from Zhuguan, the soldiers stationed at the border remained in place. The only groups setting out were the members of Marquis Gu's manor and 500 personal guards. The winter wind continued to howl while they traveled, and Yu Fu sat inside the carriage that Emperor Ning had sent from the capital. Inside, it was as warm as spring. Yaolan casually leaned back in the carriage with a cushion on her lower back. "It's so comfortable. His Majesty treats young Miss so well. The things that he sent for Princess are so nice and comfortable." The carriage was embroidered with a bright yellow phoenix embroidered on it. The inside of the carriage was very spacious. It was spacious enough for 7 or 8 people to be seated inside without it feeling cramped, and it had a heater to prepare hot tea. After enduring a month of hardship at the military camp, to be able to enjoy this sort of thing now was truly luxurious. Yu Fu lifted the curtain and looked outside. The triumphant army traveling behind the carriage formed a long and orderly line. Thinking back to the scene of Western Kuan's army retreating that she saw from Zhu Mountain's peak, Yu Fu felt quite emotional. The Gu family's army setup is really thorough. The border cities are protected by their respective armies, but they also work together and help each other. Even if head general was at the capital, the armies would be able to fight off Western Kuan's invasion. When head general travels back and forth, he only needs to bring along his personal guards. It makes the journey much faster. Then what is Western Kuan's army like? Western Kuan, Yu Fu had an expression that showed her reluctance to compliment them. Their border defenses are very weak. It can't be said that their setup is a problem because they know that Eastern Ling will not invade, thus there's absolutely no need to strengthen their border defenses. That's why their armies are usually stationed around their capital and only set out for the border when it's time to go to war. Yao Lan could not understand what the differences were and said in confusion, "What is young Miss trying to say?" Yu Fu said, "I'm saying that Western Kuan's army's setup is not thorough. Once Eastern Ling launches a counterattack on Western Kuan, it would be very easy to take their border cities." Yao Lan thought for a bit, then if Northern Li wanted to attack Western Kuan and Eastern Ling, would it not also be very easy? Over the decades, Northern Li has never attacked the two southern countries, and the two southern countries have no defenses against them. Yu Fu nodded, "That's right. My fief of Zhenjiang is on Eastern Ling's border with Northern Li. I looked through some books about it. As a location on the border, there are only 500 soldiers stationed there." 500. Yao Lan laughed and thought to herself that the soldiers stationed in Zhenjiang were not even soldiers from the Gu family's army. What good would 500 soldiers accomplish? Even if they were the best soldiers from the Gu family's army, such small numbers could not possibly endure an assault from Northern Li. It was merely a deterrent to them expanding south. While master and servant chatted inside the carriage, Gu Shubai and his brothers were also chatting outside the carriage. "Second brother, stop being mad at father. Just look at third brother, he doesn't seem to be holding any grudges. You should be happy that you have third brother to commiserate with you. When I was left behind by father for 3 days and 3 nights, I didn't have anyone to talk to about it." When Gu Shubai chatted to them after the last battle, no matter how gentle his tone, it just sounded like gloating to Gu Jiugu. Do not assume that they did not know that the one leading the final charge was Gu Shubai. He led his soldiers and was able to have his fill of killing on the battlefield, abandoning his 2 younger brothers to worry themselves to death in the side cities. What sort of older brother was this? Gu Jiugu rolled his eyes at him and did not say anything, while Gu Hanamo said, "Eldest brother never spoke about what happened during your first battle. Since you have brought it up today, why not tell us about it?" Gu Shubai immediately saw through his intentions. He did not really want to hear stories about his first battle. He just wanted to hear about his own failings. Gu Jiugu also chimed in, "That's right, eldest brother. Father is training us, and you are his accomplice. If you aren't willing to share your humiliating stories, we won't agree." "How do you plan to refuse to agree? Very well, you even dare to act against eldest brother." With the clear sound of swords coming from outside the carriage, Yu Fu could not help but laugh inside the carriage. Eldest brother isn't at all steady today. Why has he started fighting with second brother and third brother? Yao Lan lifted the curtain to take a look. While watching, she explained to Yu Fu, "Isn't this the joy of a triumphant return? When I was at Zhu Guan's military camp, I could tell that second young sir and third young sir had already fought with eldest young sir." Yu Fu cozied up to the brazier. "They even want to fight with head general. Would they dare?" Master and servant looked at each other and laughed, while the military officers rowdily cheered and watched the 3 young sirs fight. Gu Huaijiang sat inside his carriage with his eyes closed. Hearing the sounds coming from the outside, he opened the curtain and glanced outside before quickly shutting it. Yan Huashe rode in front of the carriage. "Head General, will you not be stopping the young general and the other 2? There's no need. The army suffered many casualties." Now that we have this hard-earned victory, let them have some fun. Don't be overbearing with the young soldiers. He closed his eyes once more and sat calmly inside the carriage. Yan Huasher laughed and watched the fight. That's right. The young general and the others are still young. The other soldiers in the army are also quite young. The young ones aren't as calm as we are. This battle really spoiled them. Good. Just as he said this, a loud shout boomed like thunder from the back. Yan Huasher immediately covered his ears and bitterly looked at that person, Lao Jin. Just how old are you that you're still as excitable as the young ones? That battlefield butcher had nearly deafened him. Lao Jin closely watched the three figures in the air, while his hands moved back and forth. Do you not know how old I am? Ha, quickly come and take a look. The young general's technique is really quite amazing, while the third young sir has improved quite a bit. It seems that Tian Shu, whom the deity of medicine brought to Marquis Gu's manor, taught them something really amazing. Ha, should we go and ask the young general to teach us a few things? When it came to raw strength, the young ones might not be able to compete with them, but when it came to technique, they were far worse than the young ones. Yan Huasher just rolled his eyes. You're going to go and ask for advice? Are you able to even get up there as you are? Lao Jin looked down. What's wrong with how I am? What's wrong with how I am? It's just that I have had some good fortune, and my belly has gotten a bit larger. This is a general's belly. Do you understand? Looking back up into the air, Gu Shubai pushed the two away with his sword, then turned and landed back on his horse, saying with a smile, it seems that father's methods were quite effective. Both of you have made huge improvements. You're still saying it. The two were unwilling to let it go. In front of others, they were reliable generals, but in front of their brothers, they reverted to being lively young men. Visit Wuxia World. EU for extra chapters. Gu Shubai looked at the two with a smile. Turning his head, he suddenly saw a person rapidly riding toward them in the distance. Their horse was kicking up a cloud of yellow dust. This person was carrying a banner on his back. Upon seeing the Gu family's army's banner, he headed straight for them, and everyone turned to look in his direction. Lord Marquis Gu. May I ask if Lord Marquis Gu is here? This subordinate has come with a secret message from Lord Ji. Aside from Ji Daogong from the Imperial Censorate, who else in court would be called Lord Ji? Gu Huaijiang personally stepped out of his carriage. Bring him over. Ji Daogong was someone who kept a low profile. In court, he would bide his time and avoid standing out. Why would he suddenly send someone with an urgent message? Since he sent this message, there had to be something urgent. The messenger retrieved the letter and gave it to Gu Huaijiang. The seal did indeed belong to Ji Daogong. Yu Fu also came out from her carriage and came forward with her brothers. What happened in the capital? Gu Huaijiang was in no rush to open the letter and asked the messenger. The messenger was stunned. Does Lord Marquis Gu not know? The messenger was acting strangely. What should he know? Gu Huaijiang furrowed his brow, while the messenger kneeled and cupped his hands. His Majesty was attacked by the second prince during the autumn hunt and has already passed away. What? Before anyone could even start coming down from the elation of triumph, they were instantly dragged down into a state of shock and sadness. Gu Huaijiang had always been steady. Not only was he frowning, but he was also swaying. Yu Fu hastily rushed forward to support him. Head General, he waved his hand and stared at the messenger. Is what you said true? The messenger lowered his head and cupped his hands. With Lord Ji's letter as evidence, this subordinate does not dare lie. Gu Huaijiang looked at the letter in a daze, not daring to open it. He feared that reading the letter would affirm what the messenger had said. Before he set out for battle, His Majesty had gone against the wishes of the officials and promoted Gu Jiugu and Gu Hanamo. He had always favored Marquis Gu's manner greatly. Over the years, His Majesty had envied him and suspected him but had never done anything to harm him. To die so suddenly and at the hands of his own son, Gu Huaijiang found it hard to accept. Yu Fu quietly supported him and gave Yalan a look. Just a little while earlier in the carriage, Yalan was talking about how thorough and kind His Majesty was, sending a carriage and the things that a princess should have to the border to allow her to be a little more comfortable. Who knew that in the blink of an eye, they would receive news of His Majesty's passing? Gu Shubai stared at the messenger. When did this happen? Why did we not hear about this at all? The messenger reported, this subordinate left the hunting ground the morning after His Majesty passed away. It has been 5 days since then. On the night that His Majesty passed away, Lord Ji sent an imperial guard with the news to inform Marquis Gu. That messenger left one night ahead of this subordinate. No matter what happened, they should not have arrived later than this subordinate. Gu Huaijiang had already come to an understanding of the situation. It was possible that someone had control over that imperial guard, and there was someone hoping that he would not quickly return to the capital. While opening the letter, he said to the messenger, carefully explain everything that happened at the hunting ground. Yes. At that time, the group had encircled a wild boar with His Majesty. Aside from His Majesty, the eldest prince, the second prince, and Prime Minister Yin were in the encirclement. The 4 then encircled the board. The second prince was standing across from His Majesty and shot the arrow into His Majesty's chest. Before we could bring His Majesty down the mountain, he had already stopped breathing and did not say another word. Lord Ji was worried that there would be drastic changes in court and specifically ordered this subordinate to ask Marquis Gu to quickly return. Gu Huaijiang carefully read the letter, while Gu Shubai said, where were His Majesty's guards at that time? With the second prince standing across from His Majesty, did nobody think of standing in front of him? The messenger said, someone did. But His Majesty did not allow it because the night before the hunt, the second prince showed off his accuracy with a bow. He was able to hit the bullseye in a single shot. His Majesty said that the second prince was accurate with a bow and was aiming at a boar on the ground, so how could he hit him while he was on a horse? Who knew? Ha! The second prince is skilled with a bow. Gu Jogu said, we in Marquis Gu's manor know about the second prince's skill with a bow. How could it be considered accurate? But His Majesty was right. Even if he was not accurate, he could not possibly target a boar on the ground and hit someone who was riding a horse. Unless it was done deliberately, there is no other possibility. It was deliberate. No sane person would possibly assassinate His Majesty in front of so many people. This did not benefit the second prince in the slightest. Gu Huaijiang had already finished reading the letter and placed it into his sleeve. The second prince has already been detained for the assassination of His Majesty. It has already been 5 days since His Majesty's passing. Who knows just how much of a mess the court has become. Get on your horses. From here on out, we will be rushing back to the capital. He turned back and returned to his carriage, while the soldiers put aside their earlier joy and immediately became serious. The group of 500 soldiers did not ask any questions and just orderly mounted their horses. They continued their hurried journey back to the capital, and even the young Yu Fu and Yalan acted without any sloppiness. The messenger watched in a daze, and Yan Huasher said to him, you've worked hard to rush here. Come with our group back to the capital. You're tuning into the LoveLore Library YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.